The Colorado frontier had a way of swallowing men whole. Some disappeared into gold mines that collapsed. Others got lost in snowdrifts and weren't found until spring thaw. A few just walked into the wilderness one day and never came back. Elias Blackwood had lived out here for 12 years, and most folks assumed the land would claim him eventually too. They were half right. The land had claimed something, just not his life. His cabin sat in a valley where three ridges converged, creating a natural amphitheater of pine and granite. The nearest town, Prospect Creek, was 18 miles southeast over rough terrain. No one visited. No one had reason to. The man who lived there didn't want company, didn't need help, and according to the general store owner who saw him twice a year, barely spoke enough words to complete a transaction. Just points at what he wants, Martha Hennigan told anyone who'd listen, counts out exact change, leaves, like talking to a fence post. What Martha didn't mention, because she didn't know, was that Elias heard everything. The whispers when he walked down the street, the way mothers pulled their children closer. The speculation about whether he'd lost his mind up there in the mountains or if he'd ever had one to lose. He heard it all. He just didn't care. On this particular morning in late September, Elias woke at 4:30, same as always. No alarm. His body had kept military time for so long it had become permanent. He lay still for 3 minutes, listening to the sounds of the cabin settling, the wind moving through the pine branches, the creak of the rafters as the temperature shifted. Nothing unusual. He rose, dressed in worn canvas pants and a faded wool shirt, and walked to the kitchen. The cabin was small, 12 by 20 feet, but efficiently organized. Everything had a place. Nothing was decorative. The wood stove, the table, the chair, the shelf with 7 books he'd read 100 times each. Function over form. He made coffee in a battered tin pot, strong enough to strip paint. While it brewed, he walked to the window and looked out at the pre-dawn darkness. That's when he saw it. A flicker of light, maybe a quarter-mile down the valley. Too steady to be a campfire. Too isolated to be a traveler. Someone was watching the cabin. Elias took a slow sip of coffee. His hands didn't shake. His pulse didn't quicken. He'd been expecting this. For 3 weeks now, he'd noticed the signs. A broken branch near the creek that didn't match deer traffic. Boot prints in soft earth near his property line. 2 different sizes, both recent. A faint smell of tobacco smoke one evening when the wind came from the east. Someone was scouting him. The question wasn't if they'd come. It was when and how many. He moved away from the window and opened a floor panel beneath the table. Inside was a rifle, a Sharps .52 caliber, immaculately maintained. Next to it, a shorter Winchester repeater. 3 revolvers of varying makes. Ammunition boxes stacked with geometric precision. A knife with a 10-inch blade. Elias hadn't touched these weapons in 4 years. He'd promised himself he wouldn't. But promises made to ghosts had a way of becoming negotiable when living men came calling with bad intentions. He lifted the Sharps, checked the action, and set it against the wall near the door. The Winchester went by the window. 1 revolver on his belt, 1 in a shoulder holster, 1 strapped to his ankle. He moved with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Because he had. 22 years in the cavalry, another 12 freelancing for private concerns that didn't officially exist. Jobs in Mexico, Montana, the Arizona Territory, places where governments needed things done quietly, and men like Elias Blackwood made problems disappear. He'd been good at it, too good. That's why he'd walked away. But walking away from violence didn't mean forgetting how to use it. It just meant choosing not to, until the choice got taken away. By 5:15, full light was still an hour off, but the valley had that gray pre-dawn quality where shapes began to separate from shadows. Elias counted 4 figures moving up the eastern slope. Sloppy approach. They thought darkness gave them cover, but it did the opposite. Movement showed better against stillness. He watched them for 10 minutes, cataloging their mistakes. The lead man kept looking back at the others, which meant he wasn't confident. The second stumbled twice over loose rock. The third and fourth moved better, but they were following, not leading. 4 amateurs. Maybe 5 if someone stayed with the horses. Elias almost felt disappointed. Then he saw the second group. They came from the west, moving in a staggered line with proper spacing. 3 men, possibly 4. They used the terrain, stayed low, advanced during moments when wind rustled the branches. These weren't amateurs. His jaw tightened. 8 men minimum, possibly 9. That changed things. He stepped away from the window and began his preparations in earnest. The cabin had been modified over 12 years with exactly this scenario in mind. What looked like simple log construction was actually something more complex. Elias moved to the north wall and pressed a specific knot in the wood. A panel swung inward, revealing a narrow crawl space that led to a rock outcropping 30 feet behind the cabin. Escape Route 1. He checked the south wall. Another hidden panel, this one leading to a root cellar that connected to a drainage tunnel. Escape Route 2. The east wall had no exit, but it didn't need one. It faced upslope, and he'd spent 2 years piling stones against it, making it look like natural erosion. In reality, those stones were mortared in place, creating a blast wall that could take heavy gunfire. The west wall faced the valley. Multiple windows, all shuttered on the outside with heavy oak planks, all with firing slits cut at precise angles. This wasn't a cabin. It was a fortress pretending to be a cabin. At 5:40, someone knocked on the door. 3 sharp raps, almost polite. Elias didn't answer. He stood 8 feet back from the door, Sharp's rifle ready, angled so he could see both the door and the western window. The knock came again. Harder this time. "Mr. Blackwood?" A voice, rough but trying for friendly. "Name's Dalton Reeves. Just looking for a word if you got a minute." Elias said nothing. "I know it's early," the voice continued, "but I got a business proposition that can't wait. Worth your time, I promise." Still nothing. He heard whispered conversation outside. Someone said, "Maybe he ain't here." Another voice, sharper. "His horse is in the lean-to, genius." Dalton Reeves tried again. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm going to be straight with you. We can do this easy or we can do this hard. I'm hoping for easy." Elias moved to the window, staying to the side where he couldn't be seen. Through the gap in the shutter, he counted 6 men visible in the clearing, all armed, 3 with rifles, 3 with pistols drawn. The eastern group hadn't shown themselves yet. Neither had the western approach team. They were waiting for something. "Mr. Blackwood," Dalton's voice had lost its friendly edge. "You got 10 seconds to open this door. After that, we're coming in whether you like it or not." Elias finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "You're on my land without permission. Leave." There was a pause, then laughter. "Your land?" Dalton sounded genuinely amused. "See, that's where you're confused, old man. This land belongs to the Colorado Territorial Development Corporation as of last week. Legal purchase, signed and witnessed. You're the one trespassing. I have a deed. You have paper. We have lawyers. Guess which one matters?" Elias knew how this worked. He'd seen it in Kansas, in Wyoming, in New Mexico. Companies wanted land. Homesteaders had claims. Lawyers found technicalities. When technicalities didn't work, they sent men like Dalton Reeves to make the problem go away. Usually worked too. Most homesteaders weren't fighters. They were farmers, families, people who'd take a buyout or just leave when enough pressure got applied. Elias wasn't most homesteaders. "Last chance," Dalton called out. "We got papers saying you need to vacate. You can walk out with your personal effects, or we can drag you out and burn everything. Your choice." Through the window gap, Elias saw movement on the eastern ridge. The amateur group had circled around, probably thinking they were being clever. He counted 5 of them now, spread out in the tree line. Western approach team was still hidden, which meant they were good. Total count, 11 visible, probably 12 or 13 total. Long odds. He'd worked with worse. "All right," Dalton said. "Hard way it is. Boys, light it up." The first shots came from the eastern ridge, wild, undisciplined fire that hit the cabin walls and shutters, but nothing critical, covering fire while the main group advanced. Elias didn't flinch. He'd positioned himself where ricochets couldn't reach, and the log walls were 18 inches thick. It would take a cannon to punch through. He waited. More gunfire. Someone yelled, "Rush the door!" 3 men broke from cover, running toward the cabin entrance. The lead man had a battering ram, just a heavy log, but effective enough against most doors. Elias let them get within 15 feet. Then he shot the hinges. Not the men. The hinges on the door itself. 2 precisely placed rounds from the sharps, and the entire door fell forward like a drawbridge, slamming into the lead runner and knocking him flat. The battering ram flew out of his hands, confused shouting. The other two men stumbled back, trying to process what just happened. Elias worked the sharps bolt, aimed through the now open doorway, and put a round into the ground 6 inches from Dalton Reeves' left foot. Dalton dove behind a water trough. "Next one, center mass," Elias said. The gunfire stopped for about 5 seconds. Then all hell broke loose. The Eastern Ridge team opened up with everything they had. The Western approach team broke cover and started advancing through the rocks. The men in the clearing spread out and began coordinated suppressive fire. Elias had expected this. Wanted it, actually. He dropped below the window line and moved to the south wall. Found the pull cord he'd installed and yanked hard. Outside in the clearing, a section of ground gave way. 2 men fell into a covered pit. Not deep enough to kill, just deep enough to break an ankle and take them out of the fight. Their screams cut through the gunfire. Elias didn't pause. He moved to the fireplace, reached up into the chimney, and pulled a secondary cord. On the eastern ridge, a deadfall trap released. 100 pounds of logs and rocks came crashing down the slope, forcing the ridge team to scatter or get crushed. He grabbed the Winchester and moved to the western window, arriving just as the first man from the approach team reached the cabin wall. Through the firing slit, Elias could see him clearly, young, maybe 25, pressing himself against the logs, thinking he was in a blind spot. He wasn't. Elias angled the Winchester and fired low, sending splinters of wood into the man's legs. Not a killing shot. Didn't need to be. The man went down screaming, and his partners pulled back. Dalton Reeves was yelling now, "God damn it, fall back! Regroup at the tree line!" They retreated in chaos, dragging wounded, stumbling over each other. Elias counted casualties, 2 in the pit, 1 hit by the deadfall, 1 with leg wounds. 4 down, maybe 9 still active. He reloaded both rifles, checked his revolvers, and waited. This was just the opening move. The real fight hadn't started yet. Check. Outside, behind the water trough, Dalton Reeves pressed his back against the wood and tried to control his breathing. His heart hammered. His hands shook. That wasn't supposed to happen. The old man was supposed to be scared, helpless, easy. That's what the advanced scouts said. That's what the property survey reported. 1 hermit, no defenses, no will to fight. Instead, they'd just walked into a meat grinder. "Dalton!" That was Curtis, his segundo. "We got 2 men down in that pit, 1 crushed under rocks, and Miller's bleeding bad." "What the hell is going on?" Dalton risked a glance around the trough. The cabin sat there, quiet now, smoke drifting from the chimney. Looked peaceful, looked harmless. It was neither. "Who is this guy?" Marcus asked. He was pressed against a tree trunk 20 feet away, Winchester clutched tight. "Scouts said he was just some old hermit." "Scouts were wrong," Dalton muttered. "We need to pull out," Curtis said. Regroup. Come back with more men." "We got more men," Dalton shot back. "We got 12 shooters and 1 old man in a shack. We're not running. 4 of our 12 are out of commission. Then the 8 of us will handle it." But even as he said it, Dalton knew something had shifted. They'd had the initiative. They'd had surprise. Now they had fear, and fear spread faster than wildfire in a group of hired guns. He needed to change the momentum. "Marcus," he called out, "you still got those dynamite sticks?" Marcus nodded, patting his satchel. "Good. We're going to smoke him out. Curtis, take 3 men around the north side. When you hear the explosion, you rush the back. Marcus, you're with me. We'll blow the front wall and go in shooting." "What if he's got more traps?" someone asked. "Then we'll spring him and shoot him while he's reloading. This ain't complicated. It's 1 old man with maybe 2 rifles. He can't watch every direction at once." That was the theory anyway. They spread out, moving with more caution now. The dynamite plan was simple. Throw 2 sticks through the open doorway, blow a hole big enough to create chaos, rush in during the confusion. Dalton crawled forward, keeping the water trough between himself and the cabin. Marcus moved parallel, staying low. They got within 30 feet, 20 feet, 10. Dalton pulled a dynamite stick from Marcus's satchel, struck a match, lit the fuse. The match went out. He tried again. Out again. "What the hell?" he muttered. That's when he noticed the smell, faint but distinct. Water. He looked down. The ground beneath him was wet and getting wetter, like a spring had suddenly opened up. No, not a spring. A pipe. He rolled to the side just as water erupted from the ground, a pressurized spray that soaked him and Marcus both. The dynamite stick slipped from his wet hands. Marcus grabbed it, but the fuse was drenched, useless. Son of a... The gunshot came from the cabin, close enough that Dalton felt the displacement of air. The bullet hit the water trough above his head, punching through the old wood and releasing a flood of stored water. They scrambled back, slipping in mud, covered in cold water and humiliation. From inside the cabin, a voice. That same quiet, unhurried voice. I've got enough water pressure to flood this whole clearing. You want to try again, or you want to leave while you still can? Dalton wiped water from his face and realized something that made his blood run cold. This man had been ready for them, not just ready, prepared. The traps, the water system, the firing angles. This wasn't improvised defense. This was engineering, military engineering. Who are you? Dalton shouted toward the cabin. No answer. We know you're alone in there. We know you can't hold out forever. Still nothing. Curtis appeared from the north side, shaking his head. Can't approach from that direction. The whole hillside's been rigged with tripwires and what looks like bell alarms. We'd have to cut through 20 yards of that to get close. Dalton looked at the cabin, really looked at it this time, saw the way it was positioned in the valley, the sight lines, the natural choke points, the escape routes that probably existed but weren't visible. This wasn't a hermit's cabin. This was a kill box, and they'd walked right into it. Fall back, Dalton said quietly. What? I said fall back. Get the wounded. Pull everyone to the tree line. We're done for today. You're giving up? Marcus asked. I'm being smart. We came here expecting a scared old man. We got something else. I need to report this, get new intel, and come back with a real plan. They retreated in stages, dragging the wounded from the pit, carrying Miller on a makeshift stretcher. The cabin watched them go, silent and still. Inside, Elias Blackwood lowered the Winchester and allowed himself a slow exhale. Round one complete. But he knew Dalton Reeves, knew the type anyway. They'd be back, probably with more men, definitely with more planning. He checked his ammunition, counted rounds, assessed damage to the cabin. Minimal. A few splintered boards, some bullet holes that could be patched. The traps would need to be reset, the water system refilled. He had work to do, but first, he needed to eat. Violence always made him hungry, even after all these years, especially after all these years. He heated beans and bacon on the stove, made fresh coffee, and sat at the small table. The Sharps rifle rested against the wall within reach. Old habits. As he ate, he looked at the one photograph he kept, tucked into the frame of the window, faded and creased. Two men in cavalry uniforms, younger versions of themselves, standing in front of a tent. One was Elias at 35. The other was James Whitmore, his partner, his friend. James had died 8 years ago. Not in combat, not with honor. Murdered over a land deal in Wyoming, shot in the back by hired guns working for a railroad consortium. Elias had been there, had held James while he bled out, had heard his last words, "Don't let them win." He'd tried to get justice through legal means, filed reports, testified, watched as lawyers made it all disappear. The railroad company paid fines, the hired guns scattered, no one went to prison. That's when Elias walked away from civilization entirely, bought this piece of land with the last of his savings, and built a fortress disguised as a cabin. He'd been waiting, not for revenge exactly. He'd given up on that emotion years ago, but for something, some purpose to the skills he'd spent a lifetime developing. Maybe this was it. He finished eating, cleaned his plate, and began resetting the traps. The sun was fully up now, warming the valley. Birds sang. A deer moved through the trees on the eastern ridge, unconcerned with human violence. Beautiful morning. Elias almost smiled. Then he saw the rider, single horseman, coming up the valley at an easy pace. Not with the Reeves gang. Different approach entirely. Elias picked up the Sharps and waited. The rider stopped 100 yards out, well beyond rifle range, dismounted, raised both hands to show he was unarmed. Then he called out, "Mr. Blackwood, my name is Samuel Cross. I'm not here to fight, just need 5 minutes of your time." Elias said nothing. "I know what happened this morning," Cross continued. "I know Dalton Reeves came at you. I'm not with them. I'm a lawyer from Denver." A lawyer. Even worse than hired guns. "Go away," Elias shouted. "I have information you need about who sent Reeves, about why they want your land. Don't care." I think you will when you hear the name. It's connected to James Whitmore. Elias froze. Cross saw the reaction, even at 100 yards. I have documents, court records, proof that the same people who killed your partner are behind this land grab. Let me show you. Elias's finger tightened on the trigger. He could end this right now, one shot, but something stopped him. The name, James Whitmore. How did this lawyer know about James? Put your hands on your head, Elias ordered. Walk forward slow. Any fast movements and I'll drop you. Cross complied. He walked with his hands locked behind his head, moving carefully across the clearing. He stopped 10 feet from the cabin. Close enough, Elias said. Talk. Cross nodded toward his jacket pocket. I have papers. May I? Slowly, Cross reached into his pocket with 2 fingers and pulled out a folded document. He dropped it on the ground, then stepped back. Read it, he said. It's a corporate filing from the Colorado Territorial Development Corporation. Look at the board of directors. Elias kept the rifle trained on Cross, but glanced down at the paper. He saw the names, and his world tilted, because there, listed as majority shareholder and chief executive, was a name he recognized. Harrison Blackwell, the same railroad magnate who'd ordered the hit on James Whitmore 8 years ago. The same man who'd walked away clean from that murder. The same bastard who'd bought judges and corrupted the legal system to protect himself. Now he was here, in Colorado, going after Elias's land. Why? Elias asked quietly. Cross lowered his hand slightly. May I approach? This is easier to explain with a map. Stay where you are. Talk. Your land sits on a natural pass between 2 valleys. Blackwell's planning a railroad expansion through here. Your property is the bottleneck. Without it, the whole route fails. He's invested $3 million already. Your cabin is literally the only thing standing between him and a fortune. He could go around, not without adding 100 miles and blasting through solid granite. This is the only viable path. He needs your land, Mr. Blackwood. And Harrison Blackwell doesn't ask, he takes. Elias processed this. The pieces were falling into place now. You said you're a lawyer. I am. Why tell me this? Why help me? Cross was quiet for a moment. Then, because I was James Whitmore's attorney. I tried to build a case against Blackwell after your partner died. Got stonewalled at every level, lost my practice over it. But I kept the evidence, kept digging. When I heard Blackwell was making moves in Colorado, I started tracking his operations. When I found out his target was you, he paused. I thought you'd want to know. And what do you want in return? Justice. The kind courtrooms won't deliver. You made Dalton Reeves retreat this morning. That's more than anyone's done to Blackwell's operation in 8 years. I want to help you fight. Not with guns. I'm no good at that. But with information, strategy. I know how Blackwell thinks. I know his organization. Elias studied the man. Everything about this could be a trap. Could be Blackwell himself sending a plant to get inside the cabin defenses. But something in Cross's eyes was genuine. Desperation, maybe. Or grief. Elias recognized both. If I let you approach, Elias said, and you try anything, I'll kill you. Understand? Understood. Come forward. Slow. Cross walked to the cabin. Up close, Elias could see he was younger than he'd sounded. Maybe 40, with tired eyes and ink-stained fingers. He carried a leather satchel, which Elias made him empty completely before allowing him inside. Papers. Nothing but papers. Legal documents, maps, corporate filings, correspondence. They sat at the small table. Elias kept the revolver visible. Cross spread out a map. Blackwell's timeline is aggressive. He needs to break ground on the railroad in 6 weeks or his investors pull out. That means he needs your land cleared in the next 2 weeks. Dalton Reeves was just the first attempt. There'll be others. Let them come. You can't fight them all. He'll send 20 men, 30. He'll burn you out or starve you out. I've held positions against worse odds. For how long? Days? Weeks? Blackwell can wait months, years if he has to. And the law's on his side now. That corporate filing makes this a legitimate business dispute. Local law enforcement won't help you. Federal government won't intervene. You're alone. Elias poured coffee for both of them. Then what do you suggest? Cross leaned forward. We shift the fight. Stop defending and start attacking. Blackwell operates in shadows. He bribes officials, hires proxies, keeps his hands clean. But he's not invincible. He has vulnerabilities, financial pressures, rival companies, legal challenges. We find those weak points and we exploit them. That sounds like lawyer talk for do nothing.
That sounds like strategy. You're a military man. You understand this. You don't win by holding ground forever. You win by making your enemy overextend, then cutting his supply lines. Elias sipped his coffee. He hated that Cross was making sense. "What do you need from me?" he asked finally. "Time. Protection. A base to work from. You defend this cabin, I'll attack Blackwell's organization. We coordinate. You handle the tactical, I handle the strategic. And if it doesn't work, then at least we'll go down fighting, which is better than what James got." The mention of James again. Cross was smart. He knew exactly which buttons to push. Elias looked out the window at the valley. This land had been his refuge for 12 years. His escape from violence, his attempt at peace. But peace only lasted as long as violent men allowed it, and Harrison Blackwell wasn't allowing it anymore. 2 weeks, Elias said. "I'll give you 2 weeks to show me this strategy works. You stay here, you work your legal angles, and we see what happens. But the first time I think you're playing me, you're done. Clear?" "Clear." They shook hands. Elias noticed Cross's grip was soft, academic. No calluses, no strength. This was either the best decision he'd made in years or the stupidest. Time would tell. Outside, the sun climbed higher. In the distance, toward Prospect Creek, dust rose from the road. More riders, probably. Dalton Reeves regrouping or reinforcements arriving. The siege was just beginning, but now Elias had something he hadn't had in 8 years. An ally. Maybe not a soldier, maybe not even a fighter, but someone who understood that sometimes the only way to get justice was to take it yourself. He checked his ammunition again, counted rounds, and began preparing for the next assault. The war for Blackwood Ridge had officially started, and this time Elias Blackwood wasn't running. This time he was ready. Cross spent the first 3 hours organizing his papers across Elias's small table like a general planning a campaign. Documents covered every inch of available surface, corporate filings, property surveys, witness statements from the Wyoming incident, even shipping manifests for railroad materials. The lawyer worked with focused intensity, occasionally muttering to himself, making notes in cramped handwriting that Elias couldn't decipher. Elias, meanwhile, worked on the cabin's defenses. He'd learned long ago that preparation was the difference between surviving and dying. While Cross shuffled papers, Elias reset the pit trap, reinforced the water system, and checked every firing angle for blind spots. Around noon, Cross looked up. "Do you have access to a telegraph office?" "Prospect Creek has one. I don't use it. We'll need to. I have contacts in Denver who can access court records, financial filings, corporate registrations. If I can get messages out, I can start building a legal case that at least slows Blackwell down." "Slowing him down doesn't stop him." "No, but it buys time. Time to find leverage. Everyone has something they don't want exposed, Mr. Blackwood, even Harrison Blackwell." Elias paused his work on a window shutter. "You really think you can hurt him with paperwork? I think I can make him bleed money. Legal challenges, injunctions, regulatory complaints. Every delay costs him. His investors are already nervous, that's why the timeline's so aggressive. If we can make this project look like a sinking ship, they'll pull funding. And without funding, Blackwell's just a man with a dream and no way to make it real." It was clever, Elias had to admit. Not the kind of fighting he understood, but clever nonetheless. "How do you get to Prospect Creek without getting killed?" Cross asked. "Reeves will have men watching the roads. There are other ways." "Over the mountains?" "Through them." Cross blinked. "There's a tunnel?" "Old mining shaft. Comes out 2 miles south of town. Takes 4 hours on foot, but it's completely hidden." Elias checked his pocket watch. "I could make the round trip before dark if I left now." "Then we should move fast. I'll write the telegrams. You deliver them." Cross pulled out a notebook and started scribbling. "We're going to need to be strategic about this. I'll contact my associate in Denver first. He has access to territorial records. Then I'll reach out to a journalist I know who's been investigating railroad corruption. And I'll file a formal challenge to the corporate land claim through the Federal Surveyor's Office." That's a lot of telegrams. It's a lot of angles. Blackwell's strong, but he's not omnipotent.
We hit him from multiple directions. He can't block everything. Elias gathered supplies for the journey: water, dried meat, ammunition. He strapped on both revolvers and took the Winchester. The tunnel was safe, but the area around Prospect Creek wouldn't be. Cross handed him 3 sheets of paper covered in dense text. These need to go exactly as written. Any changes could compromise the legal language.
I can read, Mr. Cross. I didn't mean... Cross stopped, realizing how that sounded.
Of course you can. I apologize. Elias took the papers without comment and headed for the north wall. He pressed the hidden panel, revealing the crawl space that connected to the tunnel entrance. "You'll be safe here while I'm gone," he said. "Don't open the door for anyone. Don't show yourself at the windows. If someone tries to force entry, there's a shotgun under the bed and extra ammunition in the floor cache. You know how to shoot?" Cross's expression answered that question. "Point it generally at the target and pull both triggers. The spread will do the rest." Comforting. Elias almost smiled. "Lock this panel behind me. I'll knock 3 times when I return. Anything else? Start shooting." He crawled into the narrow space, heard Cross secure the panel, and then he was alone in darkness. The tunnel smelled of damp earth and old timber. He'd shored it up over the years, but it still felt precarious. Thousands of tons of rock overhead, held back by wooden beams and faith. The journey took longer than usual because he moved carefully, listening for any sounds that might indicate collapse or intrusion. But the tunnel held, and eventually he emerged into a ravine 2 miles from Prospect Creek's southern edge. The sun was past its peak now, angling toward late afternoon. He had maybe 4 hours before full dark. Elias approached the town from the east, avoiding the main road. Prospect Creek was small, maybe 300 people, 1 main street, a handful of side roads. The telegraph office sat between the general store and a saloon called the Lucky Dollar. He watched from cover for 20 minutes, studying the patterns. 2 men he didn't recognize were loitering near the saloon. They wore gun belts and had that specific alertness of hired security. Reeves's men, probably, watching for him. But they were watching the main approaches, not the back alleys. Elias circled wide, came in behind the buildings, and slipped through the rear entrance of the telegraph office. The operator, a thin man named Vernon, who'd always minded his own business, looked up with startled eyes. "Mr. Blackwood, I heard there was trouble up at your... I need to send 3 telegrams, urgent priority. Here's payment." Elias laid down coins, more than enough to cover the cost and buy Vernon's discretion.
Vernon glanced at the money, then at the back door, then at Elias. "There's men looking for you. Said you're wanted for defending my own property. You going to help me or not?" Vernon hesitated. Then he took the coins. "What's the message?" Elias handed over Cross's papers. Vernon read them, his eyebrows rising with each line. "These are going to some important people." "That a problem?" "No, sir, just... This is getting complicated, isn't it?" "It's been complicated. Now it's just becoming obvious." Vernon copied the messages in his careful script and tapped them out on the telegraph key. The machine clacked and buzzed, sending Cross's words across hundreds of miles of wire. It felt strange to Elias, this invisible war being fought through electrical pulses. He preferred enemies he could see. The first 2 messages went through without issue, but halfway through the third, Vernon stopped. "What's wrong?" Elias asked. "Line's being interrupted. Someone's tapping in from another station." "Can they read the message?" "If they know what they're doing." Vernon tried again, got the same interference. "This is deliberate. Someone's blocking me." Elias considered this. Blackwell had reach, that much was clear. If he could intercept telegraph communications, it meant he had people in multiple offices, maybe even at the territorial level. "How many other stations between here and Denver?" 4 relay points. "Could you route around them? Use a different path?" Vernon scratched his jaw. "Maybe through the southern line. Goes through Pueblo instead of direct. Takes longer, costs more." Elias laid down more coins. "Do it." Vernon nodded and started the process again. This time the message went through clean. "All 3 sent," he confirmed. "Responses could take anywhere from a few hours to a day, depending. I'll check back tomorrow. Mr. Blackwood?" Vernon lowered his voice. "Those men outside? They're asking questions about you. Where you go, who you talk to, what supplies you buy. They offered me money to report if you showed up." "Did you take it?" "No, sir. I don't work that way, but others might." You should be careful. Elias nodded his thanks and slipped back out the rear entrance. He just cleared the alley when he heard voices from the street.
Check the telegraph office again. He's got to send messages sometime. We've checked it 3 times. Then check it 4. Dalton wants eyes on every possible... Elias moved quickly and quietly, putting distance between himself and the search party. He was halfway back to the ravine when he spotted smoke rising from the north. Wrong direction for the cabin. Wrong color, too. Black and thick, like burning structures rather than wood fires. He changed course, climbing to higher ground for a better view. What he saw made his jaw tighten. Reeves hadn't just regrouped, he'd brought in a small army. From his vantage point, Elias counted at least 20 men setting up a camp in the valley north of his property. They had tents, supply wagons, horses, and what looked like a small artillery piece, probably a mountain howitzer, light enough to transport but heavy enough to punch through log walls. They were preparing for a siege. Elias studied the layout. The camp was well organized, with clear sight lines and defensive positions. Whoever was running this operation knew basic military tactics, not expert level, but competent enough to be dangerous. He spotted Dalton Reeves near the command tent, gesturing at a map. Next to him stood someone new, a tall man in a clean suit, definitely not hired muscle. The way Reeves deferred to him suggested authority. Blackwell himself? No, probably an intermediary. Someone sent to make sure the job got done right this time. Elias watched for another 10 minutes, memorizing positions and routines. Then he worked his way back to the tunnel entrance, his mind already calculating odds and options. 20 men with artillery changed the equation significantly. His cabin could withstand rifle fire and maybe even a few dynamite charges, but a howitzer shell could collapse the whole structure. And if they had 1 cannon, they might have more. He needed to adjust his strategy. The tunnel journey back felt longer. His legs ached from the climbing, and his mind raced with tactical problems. By the time he emerged into the crawl space behind his cabin, full darkness had fallen. He knocked 3 times on the panel. Nothing. He knocked again, louder. The panel cracked open an inch. Cross's voice, shaky. "Mr. Blackwood?" "It's me." The panel swung wide. Cross looked pale. "Thank everything you're back. Someone rode past earlier, just 1 man, circling the property. I thought, scout, making sure I wasn't here." Elias pulled himself through and secured the panel. "They're setting up a siege camp, 20 men, maybe more. They have artillery." Cross sat down heavily. "Artillery. That's not good." "No, it's not." Elias filled 2 cups with water and handed one to Cross. "Your telegrams went out. Took some creative routing, but they're on their way." "How long until responses?" "Operator said maybe tomorrow. Could be longer." "We might not have longer. If they're bringing in artillery, then we don't wait for them to use it." Elias spread out his own rough map of the valley on the table. "They're camped here, north of my position. Supply wagons are here. Artillery piece is here, still being assembled. Command tent is center of the camp." Cross studied the map. "You're planning to attack them?" "I'm planning to make them reconsider their timeline. That's 20 armed men against 1. 20 men who think they're safe in their camp. Who aren't expecting trouble. Who probably have minimal guard rotation because they figure I'm pinned down here." "You're serious." "I'm practical. They want to lay siege? Fine. But sieges run on supplies and morale. I take out their supplies, their morale drops. Their morale drops, they start making mistakes. They make mistakes, I exploit them." Cross rubbed his face. "This is insane. You could get killed." "I could get killed staying here too, just slower. At least this way I'm making the moves instead of reacting to theirs." "What do you need from me?" "Stay here. Keep working on your legal angle. If I'm not back by dawn, assume I'm dead and use the south tunnel to get out. Don't try to fight them yourself." "What if your attack fails? What if they come here while you're gone? Then you use that shotgun I showed you and you make them pay for every inch." Elias checked his revolvers, loaded the Winchester, and strapped a knife to his belt. "I'm not planning to fail." He left through the north crawl space again, moving through darkness with the confidence of someone who'd memorized every rock and tree on his property. The night was cool, overcast, no moon, perfect conditions for what he had in mind. The enemy camp glowed in the distance, campfires and lanterns, warm and inviting and tactically stupid. All that light ruined night vision and made perfect targets for anyone attacking from darkness. Elias approached from the east, staying low and moving during moments when wind rustled branches to cover any noise. He got within 50 yards before encountering the first sentry. The man was young, maybe 20, sitting on a log and smoking a cigarette. The glowing ember marked his position like a beacon. He was supposed to be watching the perimeter, but instead he was staring at the camp, probably wishing he was near the fire with the others. Elias moved past him without the sentry ever knowing he was there. The camp layout was predictable. Supply wagons at the north end, horses picketed to the east, command tent in the center, artillery piece to the south with a tarp over it. Men clustered around 3 campfires, talking and playing cards. Elias counted 18 visible, 2 more probably on sentry duty elsewhere, which matched his earlier count. He worked his way to the supply wagons, staying in shadows. Inside the first wagon, food stores, ammunition crates, barrels of water. The second wagon held tools, rope, and several crates marked danger, explosives. Dynamite. Perfect. Elias carefully opened one crate and removed 3 sticks. He closed the crate and backed away, then circled to the horse picket. The animals were nervous, sensing something wrong. Elias whispered softly, letting them catch his scent. Horses from his cavalry days had taught him the language. Stay calm, move slow, show no threat. He cut 3 picket ropes with his knife. Not all of them, just enough to cause chaos when the time came. Then he moved to the artillery piece. Up close, it was indeed a mountain howitzer, 12-pounder, probably Civil War surplus. Someone had cleaned it recently. The barrel gleamed in the firelight. Elias knelt beside it and studied the carriage mechanism. He couldn't disable it completely without tools, but he could sabotage it in ways that wouldn't be obvious until they tried to fire. He removed the elevation screw and threw it into the darkness. Without it, they couldn't aim properly. Then he loosened the carriage bolts just enough that the first shot would likely throw the whole assembly apart. Good enough. Now for the supply wagon. He returned to the explosives crate, set 1 dynamite stick inside with a long fuse, and ran the fuse line back toward the perimeter. The other 2 sticks he placed near the base of the command tent, also with long fuses. 3 targets, 3 charges, all timed to go off within seconds of each other. He was heading back to light the fuses when someone spoke behind him. "Hey, who's there?" Elias turned slowly. A sentry stood 10 feet away, rifle half raised, squinting into darkness. "Just checking the supplies," Elias said in a casual tone, pitching his voice differently than normal. The sentry hesitated. "I don't recognize you." "New recruit, got in this afternoon." "Nobody said anything about—" Elias moved fast, closing the distance before the sentry could fully raise the rifle. He grabbed the barrel, twisted it aside, and drove his knee into the man's stomach. The sentry folded. Elias caught him before he hit the ground and dragged him into shadow. The sentry groaned. Elias put a hand over his mouth. "Quiet. I don't want to kill you, but I will if you make me." The sentry's eyes were wide with fear. "How many men total in this camp?" Elias asked. The sentry held up 2 hands twice. 20. That matched Elias's count. "Who's in charge? The man in the suit?" A nod. "What's his name?" The sentry tried to talk. Elias eased his hand away slightly. "Carson," the man whispered. "Richard Carson. He's Blackwell's operations manager." "Carson give the orders?" "Him and Dalton Reeves together." "Where are they now?" "Command tent. They've been planning the assault for tomorrow morning." Tomorrow morning. That confirmed Elias's timeline. "You have family?" Elias asked. The question confused the sentry. "What?" "Family. People who'd miss you if you died." Yes, wife and daughter, in Denver." Elias looked at the young man, barely old enough to shave, taking mercenary work because it paid better than honest labor. Probably didn't even know what he'd signed up for. "Then quit," Elias said. "After tonight, this camp's going to be chaos. Use the confusion to ride out. Go back to Denver, find different work." "I can't just—" "You can, and you will, because the alternative is being here when this whole thing goes to hell." Elias hit him once, clean and quick, and the sentry went limp. Not dead, just unconscious. He'd wake up in an hour with a headache and a choice to make. Elias returned to the fuse lines, struck a match, and lit all 3 at once. Then he ran.
He was 100 yards away when the first charge blew.
The supply wagon erupted in a fireball that lit up the valley like daylight. Men screamed. Someone yelled, "Fire!" and bodies scrambled in all directions. Before they could organize, the second and third charges went off. Twin explosions that collapsed one side of the command tent and sent canvas and debris flying. The picketed horses panicked at the noise, and the ones with cut ropes bolted, adding to the confusion. Elias kept moving, circling around to the south. He could hear Dalton Reeves shouting orders, trying to establish control, but chaos had momentum now. Someone fired a rifle blindly into the darkness. Others joined in, shooting at shadows and imagination. Elias reached a rocky outcrop that gave him clear sight lines to the camp. He raised the Winchester, took careful aim, and put 3 rounds into the remaining supply wagon. The third shot hit something flammable, and another fire started. More panic, more shooting. He fired twice more, deliberately missing men but hitting equipment. A water barrel exploded. A tent support collapsed. Then he disappeared back into darkness, working his way toward home. Behind him, the camp burned. Men shouted. Horses ran wild. The siege was supposed to start tomorrow morning. Instead, it had just ended tonight. Elias made it back to the cabin an hour before dawn. He knocked 3 times, and Cross opened the panel immediately.
"I heard explosions," the lawyer said.
"What happened?"
"Supply disruption." Elias crawled through and started stripping off his gear. He was covered in soot and dirt, his hands scratched from crawling through rocks. "You blew up their camp?" "Parts of it, enough to slow them down." Cross started to laugh. It began as a nervous chuckle but built into genuine mirth. "You magnificent lunatic! You actually attacked them." "Surprised?"
Terrified. Impressed. Both. Cross poured coffee with shaking hands. "What happens now?" "Now they regroup. Probably pull back to Prospect Creek to resupply. That buys us maybe 2 days. And in 2 days? We'll see if your legal strategy works. If not, we do it again. You can't keep attacking them indefinitely. Watch me." Elias cleaned his weapons, checked ammunition counts, and finally allowed himself to sit. His body ached. He wasn't 20 anymore, wasn't even 40. These night raids took more out of him than they used to, but they still worked. That's what mattered. Cross organized his papers while Elias rested. They worked in silence, each focused on their own form of warfare. Around dawn, Cross spoke again. "You know this can't end with just defending your land, right?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, even if we stop this attack, even if we make Blackwell's timeline collapse, he's still out there, still powerful, still angry. He'll come at you again, or he'll come at someone else. Men like him don't stop until they're stopped permanently." "So what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we don't just play defense. We go after him, really go after him. Find something that puts him in prison or destroys his empire entirely." Elias considered this. It was the kind of thinking that had gotten James killed, trying to take down someone too big, too connected, too protected by wealth and power. But maybe that's exactly why it needed to happen. "You have something specific in mind?" he asked. Cross pulled out a worn ledger from his satchel. "I've been tracking Blackwell's operations for years. Every property acquisition, every suspicious land deal, every politician who suddenly changed their vote after meeting with him. It's all in here. The problem is, evidence alone isn't enough. We need something bigger, something public, something he can't buy his way out of." "Like what?" "Like catching him in the act, like forcing him to expose himself." "How?" Cross smiled, and for the first time, Elias saw something dangerous in the lawyer's eyes. "We make him desperate. We threaten the one thing he values more than anything, his money, his investors. If we can make them lose faith in him, make them pull their funding, he'll have to act personally. And when he does, we'll be ready." It was ambitious, probably impossible. Elias liked it. "Tell me more," he said. They spent the next 3 hours planning. Cross explained the financial architecture of Blackwell's railroad venture, the investors, the timelines, the leverage points. Elias contributed tactical knowledge about how to create pressure, how to make an enemy reveal themselves. By mid-morning, they had the outline of a strategy. It was risky. It required perfect timing. It would probably get them both killed, but it might actually work. A knock at the door interrupted them. Both men froze. Elias grabbed the Winchester, cross-backed against the wall. 3 knocks, then a voice. Mr. Blackwood, it's Vernon from the telegraph office. I have your responses. Elias approached the door cautiously. How do I know it's you? Because I'm the only one stupid enough to ride out here alone, and because your telegram's got interesting replies that you'll want to see. Elias cracked the door, keeping the rifle ready. It was indeed Vernon, looking nervous and windblown from the ride. He held a leather envelope. Come in, fast. Vernon slipped inside, and Elias secured the door behind him. You shouldn't have come out here, Elias said. Too dangerous. You paid me well enough to take the risk. Vernon handed over the envelope. 3 responses, all urgent. The one from Denver is marked priority. Cross opened the envelope with shaking hands. He read the first telegram, and his expression changed from hope to excitement. What is it? Elias asked. My associate in Denver. He found something. Blackwell's corporate filings have discrepancies. The land claim he filed for your property? It's based on a survey that was never officially certified, which means it's not legal, Vernon finished. I read it. Couldn't help myself. That's big news, Mr. Blackwood. Cross was already reading the second telegram. And this one. This is from the journalist. He's interested in the story. Wants to investigate. If we can give him proof of corruption, he'll publish. Will that actually matter? Elias asked. To Blackwell's investors? Absolutely. They're businessmen, not criminals. If they think they're funding illegal operations, they'll run. The third telegram was shorter. Cross read it twice, then looked up with an odd expression. What? Elias asked. It's from a federal land inspector. He's offering to come out here personally to verify the survey boundaries. Says if Blackwell's claim is fraudulent, he has authority to void it immediately. When? He could be here in 3 days. 3 days. That was cutting it close, but it was doable. We need to keep Blackwell's people away from here until then, Cross said. If the inspector arrives and finds this place destroyed, or you dead, the investigation dies with it. I can hold for 3 days. Against 20 men with artillery? Against whatever they bring. Vernon cleared his throat. If you gentlemen don't mind, I'd like to leave before anyone notices I'm gone. Reeves has people watching the telegraph office now. I told them I was delivering to a ranch east of here, but they're not stupid. Elias handed him more coins. For your trouble. And your risk. Appreciated. Vernon headed for the door, then paused. Mr. Blackwood, I don't know exactly what you're fighting for, but, well, I hope you win. He left quickly, his horse disappearing into the trees. Cross and Elias looked at each other. 3 days, Cross said. 3 days? Elias agreed. Outside in the distance, they could see smoke still rising from the destroyed camp. Reeves would be furious. Carson would be reporting failure to Blackwell. The pressure would increase. But now they had a timeline, a goal, a chance. Elias began preparing the cabin's defenses in earnest. He reinforced weak points, stockpiled ammunition, set up additional traps in the surrounding forest. Cross worked his legal angles, drafting documents that would support the inspector's investigation. They worked through the afternoon and into evening, 2 very different men united by a common enemy. As night fell, Elias stood watch at the window while Cross slept fitfully at the table. The valley was quiet, but it was the quiet before a storm. Tomorrow, Reeves would return. Tomorrow, the real siege would begin. But tomorrow, Elias would be ready. And this time, he wouldn't be fighting alone. They came at first light, but not the way Elias expected. No mass charge, no artillery barrage. Instead, a single rider approached under a white flag, stopping 100 yards from the cabin and dismounting slowly with hands raised. Elias watched through the rifle scope. The man was older, maybe 50, wearing a suit that looked expensive even from this distance. Not Dalton Reeves, not Carson either. Someone new. Mr. Blackwood, the man called out. My name is Albert Hutchins. I'm here to negotiate. Cross moved beside Elias at the window. You recognize him? No, you. Albert Hutchins. He's a mediator, works for mining companies, railroad consortiums. His job is to solve problems before they become expensive. Meaning? Meaning Blackwell sent someone whose entire purpose is to make you an offer you can't refuse. Elias kept the rifle trained on Hutchins. What kind of offer? Money, probably. A lot of it. Enough to make fighting seem stupid.
I'm not selling. I know. But hear him out anyway. Sometimes what people offer tells you what they're really afraid of. That made sense. Elias lowered the rifle slightly and called back. Say what you came to say. Hutchins pulled a document from his jacket pocket. I'm authorized to offer you $20,000 for your property. Cash payment, immediate transfer. You can take the money and relocate anywhere you want. $20,000. That was serious money. Enough to buy land somewhere else, build a new life, maybe even start fresh in California or Oregon. Cross whistled softly. That's 10 times what this property's worth. Then why is he offering it? Elias asked. Because 3 days of delays are costing Blackwell more than $20,000. The investor timeline is ticking. Every day that passes, his credibility drops. Elias shouted back, Not interested. Hutchins didn't look surprised. $30,000. Final offer, and safe passage out of the territory. Safe passage means they were planning to kill me anyway, Elias muttered. Cross nodded. Once you signed over the deed, you'd be a loose end. They'd eliminate you before you could tell anyone about the intimidation tactics. No deal, Elias called out. Hutchins stood there for a long moment, the white flag hanging limp in the still morning air. Then he folded the document and put it back in his pocket. Mr. Blackwood, I'm a reasonable man. I broker deals. I find middle ground. But I need you to understand something. His voice was calm, almost friendly. The people I work for have invested considerable resources into this venture. They will not walk away empty-handed. If you won't accept fair compensation, they'll take other measures. Let them try. They already are. Hutchins gestured toward the tree line. Right now, there are 23 armed men surrounding this valley. They have orders to contain you until you either accept our offer or circumstances change. Circumstances, Elias repeated. Legal circumstances. It's possible that territorial authorities might determine you're squatting on contested land, or that you've engaged in violent resistance against lawful claimants. Either way, you'd be removed by force, and the land would revert to proper ownership. Cross gripped Elias's shoulder. He's talking about bribing the marshal, getting you arrested. Can they do that? If Blackwell owns the right people, absolutely. Hutchins continued, his voice carrying that same measured reasonableness. I'm offering you a way out, Mr. Blackwood. A profitable way out. Take the money. Start somewhere new. Live well. The alternative is considerably less pleasant. Elias had heard this kind of talk before. Back in his cavalry days, they called it the soft approach. Offer incentives first, then slowly reveal the threats underneath. Make the target think they had a choice when really they had none. Except Elias did have a choice. He'd always had a choice. You tell Blackwell something for me, Elias said, his voice carrying across the clearing. Tell him James Whitmore says hello. Hutchins' expression changed. Just for a second, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. I see, he said quietly. So that's what this is really about. You know the name? I know that James Whitmore died in Wyoming 8 years ago under unfortunate circumstances. I also know that pursuing old grievances rarely ends well for anyone involved. Then I guess we'll see how it ends. Hutchins sighed, picked up his white flag, and remounted his horse. You're making a terrible mistake, Mr. Blackwood, but it's your mistake to make. He rode back toward the tree line, disappearing into the forest. Cross exhaled slowly. Well, that's it then. They know you know about James. They know this isn't just about the land. Good. I want them to know. Why? Because now they're scared. Hutchins came out here personally, offered money they can't afford to lose just to make me go away quietly. That means the legal pressure's working. That means we're hurting them. Cross walked to the table and sat down heavily. Or it means they're about to escalate. They were already escalated. Last night's raid just made them show their hand earlier than planned. 23 men, Elias. He said 23. That's more than before. I heard him. How long can you actually hold against that many? It was a fair question, one Elias had been asking himself since Vernon left yesterday. The honest answer was maybe 2 days if everything went perfectly, probably less. But he didn't need long, just long enough for the federal inspector to arrive and verify the fraudulent land claim, just long enough for Cross's legal strategy to work. 3 days. He just needed 3 days. I can hold, Elias said. Cross didn't look convinced, but he nodded anyway. Then what do we do now?
Now we wait. They'll probe our defenses, test our response, probably try to draw me out or force a mistake. Standard siege tactics. You've done this before. Different circumstances, same principles. They spent the next hour in tense silence. Elias watched the tree line through the rifle scope, noting movement patterns and potential approach vectors. Cross-reviewed his legal documents, making notes in margins. Around mid-morning, the first shot came. Not close. A rifle round that hit a tree 50 yards from the cabin, deliberately wide. Warning shot, Elias said. They want me to know they're there. Another shot, closer this time, then another. They're ranging, Cross said nervously, finding the distance. Let them. The cabin's built to take this. The shooting continued sporadically for the next 2 hours. Random shots from different positions, none seriously threatening but all designed to wear on their nerves. Psychological warfare. Elias ignored it. He'd been under sustained fire before, real fire meant to kill. This was just noise. But it was affecting Cross. The lawyer flinched at each shot, his hands shaking when he tried to write. You should move away from the window, Elias said. I'm fine. You're not. And that's okay. This isn't your world. Cross set down his pen. How do you do it? Just sit here while people shoot at you? Practice. And understanding that panic doesn't help. Fear's natural. Letting it control you is a choice. That's easy to say when you've been trained for this. It's easy to say because it's true. You think I'm not scared? I'm 62 years old, alone except for a lawyer with no combat experience, facing an enemy with superior numbers and resources. I'm terrified. I just don't let it make my decisions. Cross looked at him with something like wonder. I thought people like you didn't feel fear. People like me feel it more. We've just seen enough to know what's worth being afraid of and what isn't. Random rifle shots from nervous hired guns? Not worth it. As if to punctuate his point, another shot cracked through the air and thudded into the cabin wall. Cross still flinched, but less than before. They were settling into a rhythm when the pattern changed. The shooting stopped abruptly. Complete silence fell over the valley, broken only by wind in the pines and the distant call of a crow. Elias tensed. Silence was worse than gunfire. Silence meant something was happening. He scanned the tree line methodically, sector by sector. Nothing visible, no movement, no. There. Eastern ridge, a glint of metal catching sunlight. They're moving the artillery, he said. Cross rushed to the window. Can they hit us from there? If they get the angle right. Elias calculated distance and trajectory. But that howitzer I sabotaged last night is probably still broken. They'd need to repair it or bring in a different gun. How long would that take? Hours, maybe a full day if they have to send to Prospect Creek for parts. That was good. That bought time. But then Elias saw something else. Movement in the western tree line. 3 men carrying something heavy between them. Not artillery. Something else. They've got a battering ram, he said. Same type they tried to use yesterday. Will the door hold? Door's already down from yesterday, but they don't know that yet. Elias smiled grimly. Which means they're about to waste a lot of effort on a target that doesn't exist. Cross almost laughed. Should we tell them? Where's the fun in that? They watched as the 3 men with the battering ram advanced toward the cabin, moving in short rushes between cover. 2 other men provided covering fire, shooting at the windows to keep any defenders' heads down. Amateur tactics. They were exposing themselves unnecessarily, bunching up, moving predictably. Elias could have dropped all 5 of them in under 10 seconds. But he didn't want to kill them if he could avoid it. These were hired men, not the real enemy. Most of them probably didn't even know about James Whitmore or Harrison Blackwell's larger schemes. They were just trying to earn money. Still, he couldn't let them reach the cabin unchallenged. He aimed carefully and fired twice. The first shot hit the ground 6 inches in front of the lead man's feet. The second shattered the battering ram's handle. The men scattered like quail, diving for cover and returning blind fire. You could have hit them, Cross observed. Didn't need to. They got the message. And they had. The ram team retreated to the tree line, regrouping. Elias could see them arguing, pointing at the cabin, probably trying to decide their next move. Then Dalton Reeves appeared, striding out into the open with the kind of false confidence that came from desperation. "Blackwood," he shouted, "this is getting ridiculous. You can't win. You're one old man against an army." Elias didn't respond. "I know Cross is in there with you," Reeves continued. "We saw that telegraph operator visit yesterday. Whatever you're planning, it won't work. Blackwell owns the territorial government. He owns the marshals. He owns the judges. Your legal tricks are worthless." Cross grabbed Elias's arm. "Is that true? Can he really own all of them?" "Some of them, probably. But not the federal inspector. That's outside territorial jurisdiction." "You sure?" "No, but it's the play we've got." Reeves was still talking, his voice getting louder and angrier. "You want to know what happens next? Carson's sending for reinforcements. By tomorrow night, we'll have 40 men out here, 40, and we'll have working artillery. We'll shell this cabin until there's nothing left but splinters and ash. You hear me?" Elias did the math. If they brought in that many men, with proper artillery support, even his fortified cabin wouldn't hold. He'd have to evacuate, use the tunnels, wage a guerrilla campaign from the mountains. That could work for a while, but it wouldn't stop Blackwell from taking the land. He needed the inspector to arrive before that happened. Needed the legal pressure to break Blackwell's timeline. Cross was writing frantically. "We need to send another message. Speed up the inspector's arrival. Can you get back to Prospect Creek?" "Not in daylight with this many men watching." "Tonight, then. We have to try." Elias nodded. It was risky, but Cross was right. They needed to accelerate the timeline. Reeves was walking back toward the tree line now, apparently done with his speech. But before he disappeared into cover, he turned and shouted one more thing. "Hutchins gave you a chance. You should have taken it. Because Carson's not like me. He doesn't negotiate. He doesn't offer deals. He just gets results, whatever it takes. And he'll be here tomorrow to finish this personally." Then he was gone. The valley fell quiet again. Cross looked pale. "Carson. That's the man from last night. Blackwell's operations manager." "I remember. If he's coming here personally, it means Blackwell's losing patience. It means they're going to do something drastic." Elias checked his ammunition stores again, counting rounds. He had maybe 200 rifle cartridges, another 100 for the revolvers. Enough for a sustained fight, but not an extended siege. "We hold until tonight," he said. "Then I make another run to Prospect Creek, speed up the inspector. Maybe send word to that journalist too. The more pressure we put on Blackwell publicly, the less he can do privately. And if Carson arrives before the inspector, then we improvise." It wasn't a great plan, but great plans required resources they didn't have. The afternoon dragged on. More sporadic gunfire, more probing attacks that Elias easily repelled. It was clear Reeves's men were following orders to contain rather than assault. They were waiting for Carson. Elias used the time to prepare for tonight's journey. He plotted the safest route to town, identified fallback positions if he got spotted, counted out the ammunition he'd carry. Cross wrote messages, carefully worded appeals to the inspector and the journalist. His handwriting got messier as stress took its toll, but the content was solid. "These need to work," Cross said, holding up the papers. "This is our last real chance." "They'll work?" "How can you be sure?" "I can't, but confidence helps more than doubt." Cross laughed bitterly. "Is that military wisdom?" "It's survivor wisdom. I've seen men with every advantage lose because they didn't believe they could win. And I've seen men with nothing win because they refused to accept any other outcome." "Which one are we?" Elias looked around the cabin. One room, 2 men, limited supplies, an enemy with overwhelming force. "We're the ones who refused to lose," he said. As sunset approached, the gunfire stopped completely. Reeves's men pulled back to their camp, leaving the valley quiet except for evening bird song. Elias ate a cold meal of jerky and hardtack, conserving resources. Cross picked at his food, too nervous to eat much. "What happens if you don't come back?" Cross asked suddenly. "Use the south tunnel. Get to Prospect Creek. Find that federal inspector and tell him everything. Show him the documents. They'll kill me before I get halfway to town." "Maybe. Or maybe they'll be too busy searching for me to notice you slipping away." "That's not reassuring. It's realistic. This is a bad situation, Cross. We both know it. But we're not dead yet, and that means we keep fighting." Full darkness fell. Elias geared up for the journey, taking only what he absolutely needed. Light and fast was better than armed and slow. He was heading for the north panel when Cross spoke again. "Elias?" It was the first time the lawyer had used his first name. "Yeah?" Thank you for not giving up, for fighting. Most people would have taken Hutchins' money and run. Most people didn't have a friend murdered by these bastards. Still, thank you." Elias nodded and slipped into the crawl space. The tunnel was dark and close, but familiar now. He moved by touch and memory, counting steps and turns. He emerged into the ravine 2 miles from town and paused to let his eyes adjust. The night was overcast again, which helped conceal movement but made navigation harder. He could see lights from Prospect Creek in the distance. Not many. The town mostly shut down after dark. That was good. Fewer witnesses. The journey took an hour of careful movement. He approached from the south again, avoiding main roads, staying in shadows. The telegraph office was dark. He went to the back entrance and knocked softly. No response. He knocked again, harder. A light appeared inside. Footsteps. Then Vernon's voice, cautious. "Who's there?" "Blackwood." The door opened immediately. Vernon pulled him inside and locked it behind them. "You shouldn't be here," the operator said. "Reeves has men watching. They threatened me today. Wanted to know if I'd sent messages for you." "What did you tell them?" "That I hadn't," which was technically true. "I sent them yesterday." Elias handed over Cross's new messages. "These need to go tonight. Urgent priority." Vernon read them by lamplight. His expression grew increasingly concerned. "You're asking the federal inspector to come immediately. That's a big ask." "Can you send it?" "I can send it. I can't guarantee he'll respond the way you want." "Send it anyway." Vernon moved to his telegraph key, then hesitated. "Mr. Blackwood, there's something you should know. A man came through this afternoon, well-dressed, educated, asked a lot of questions about you." "Hutchins?" "No, different man. He said his name was Carson." Elias felt his jaw tighten. "What did he want to know?" "Everything. Your habits, your friends, who you talk to, who supplies you." "I told him I barely knew you, which is mostly true, but he wasn't satisfied. He gave me $20 and said there'd be more if I reported any unusual activity." "Did you take the money?" Vernon looked offended. "Of course not. I'm not one of Blackwell's creatures." "Good man. Send the messages. I'll wait." While Vernon worked the telegraph, Elias moved to the window and watched the street. A few people moved between buildings. A drunk stumbled out of the Lucky Dollar. Everything looked normal. But normal was an illusion in a town where Blackwell's money flowed. The telegraph key clacked rapidly. Vernon's fingers moved with practiced efficiency, translating Cross's words into electrical pulses that raced across hundreds of miles of wire. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then the key started receiving. Vernon transcribed quickly, his face illuminated by the lamp. "Response from Denver," he said. "The inspector confirms he's coming. Says he'll arrive day after tomorrow." Day after tomorrow. That was the original timeline, not accelerated. "Can you push him?" Elias asked. "Tell him it's an emergency?" Vernon sent another message. Waited. The response came back quickly this time. He says day after tomorrow is the fastest he can manage. He's currently investigating a claim near Fort Collins. Can't leave until that's resolved. Damn. That meant 2 more days of holding off Reeves's men. 2 more days before Carson arrived with reinforcements. "What about the journalist?" Elias asked. Vernon sent that message. The wait was longer this time, almost 20 minutes. Finally, the key clacked again. Vernon read the response and smiled. "The journalist is interested, very interested. Says if you can provide documented proof of corruption and illegal land seizure, he'll run the story in the Denver Post." Front page. That was something. Public exposure might not stop Blackwell directly, but it would make his investors nervous. Nervous investors meant pulled funding. Pulled funding meant failed projects. "Tell him we'll have proof when the inspector verifies the fraudulent survey," Elias said. Vernon sent the confirmation. They were about to finish when the telegraph key suddenly came alive on its own, receiving a message Vernon hadn't requested. The operator's face went pale as he transcribed. "What is it?" Elias asked. "It's from the Territorial Marshal's office. Official notice. Says there's a warrant for your arrest. Charges are trespassing on corporate land and assault on lawful agents. That's Blackwell's doing. It's also legally binding. If a marshal shows up with that warrant, I have to cooperate. Everyone does." Elias absorbed this. Blackwell was covering all his bases. Legal pressure, physical pressure, financial pressure. He was running a comprehensive operation designed to crush any resistance. But he was also spending resources fast. Every man he hired, every official he bribed, every message he intercepted, it all cost money and time. And time was what Elias was buying. "When does the warrant go active?" he asked. "Tomorrow morning. That's when the marshal will be notified." Tomorrow morning. Which meant Elias had tonight to move freely, and after that he'd be a wanted man. The situation was deteriorating fast. He thanked Vernon, gave him more money, and slipped back out into the night. The return journey felt longer. His mind was racing with calculations and contingencies. 2 days until the inspector arrived, but the warrant would be active in hours. Carson was coming tomorrow with reinforcements. The timeline was collapsing. He was halfway back to the tunnel when he heard voices ahead. 2 men, moving through the darkness with hooded lanterns. They were searching the area around the ravine entrance, systematically checking every possible hiding spot. Reeves's men. They'd found the tunnel. Elias froze, pressing himself against a rock face. The searchers were 30 yards away, moving closer. "Check that cleft," one of them said. "Anything big enough for a man to crawl through." They were being thorough, too thorough. This wasn't random patrol. Someone had told them where to look. Had Vernon been compromised? No, the operator had been genuinely helpful. But maybe someone had followed Elias from town, or maybe they'd just figured out there had to be another way in and out. Either way, the tunnel was blown. Elias watched as the searchers moved directly toward the ravine entrance. In another minute, they'd find it. And once they did, they'd either collapse it or guard it, cutting off his primary escape route. He couldn't let that happen. Moving silently, he circled around to approach from behind. The searchers were focused on the ravine, their lanterns creating pools of light that destroyed their night vision. Rookie mistake. Elias got within 15 feet before one of them noticed movement and turned. "Hey, who's—" Elias closed the distance fast, knocked the lantern from the man's hand, and drove a fist into his solar plexus. The searcher went down gasping. The second man reached for his pistol. Elias grabbed his wrist, twisted, and sent the gun flying into darkness. Then he swept the man's legs and put him on the ground hard. Both searchers were down but conscious, trying to recover their breath. "How did you find this place?" Elias demanded. The first searcher coughed, struggling to speak. Reeves hired trackers. They found footprints." Trackers. Of course. Elias had been careful, but no one was perfect. A broken twig here, a disturbed rock there. Professional trackers could follow a trail most people would miss. How many others know about this tunnel? Just us? We were supposed to report back. Elias considered his options. He could let them go, but they'd report the tunnel's location. He could tie them up, but they'd eventually get free. He could kill them, but that would make him exactly what Blackwell's propaganda was claiming, a violent criminal. He chose a middle path. "Listen carefully," he said. "You're going to walk back to camp and tell Reeves you searched this area and found nothing. You're going to say the tracks led to a dead end. Understand?" "Why would we do that?" "Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone in that camp knows you two got beaten unconscious by an old man in under 10 seconds. That'll do wonders for your reputations." The men looked at each other. "How do we know you won't kill us anyway?" the second one asked. "You don't, but I haven't yet, which should tell you something. I don't want to kill you. I just want to be left alone on my own land. You want to keep collecting Blackwell's money for an easy job. We can both get what we want if you walk away right now and forget this happened." He stepped back, giving them room to stand. They got up slowly, keeping their hands visible. "What about our guns?" one asked. "Leave them. Consider it a lesson in paying attention to your surroundings." The searchers retreated into the darkness, moving quickly. Elias watched until they disappeared, then collected their weapons and lanterns. He tossed the guns into a deep crevice where they wouldn't be found. Then he entered the tunnel and sealed the entrance behind him with loose rocks and branches. It wouldn't hold up to serious scrutiny, but in darkness it might pass. The tunnel felt tighter now, more claustrophobic. Knowing that enemies had come close to finding it changed the psychology of the space. He emerged in the cabin crawl space and knocked 3 times. Cross opened the panel immediately. "Thank everything, I thought—" He stopped, seeing Elias's expression. "What happened?" They found the tunnel. I convinced the searchers to keep quiet, but we can't rely on it holding. They'll figure it out eventually. So we're trapped? We still have the south tunnel, but yeah, our mobility's compromised. Elias explained the rest of it. The warrant, the inspector's timeline, the journalist's interest. Cross listened with growing despair. 2 more days. We have to hold for 2 more days against a wanted man warrant, 40 reinforcements, and Carson himself. That's the situation. We're going to die here. Or maybe. Or maybe we find a way to turn this around. Elias poured water, drank deeply. Blackwell's overextending. He's spending too much, moving too fast, creating too much attention. That's desperation. And desperate men make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind we can exploit. He's got a warrant out for me, which means he's using official channels. That creates paper trails, documentation, the kind of evidence that journalists can use. Cross sat up straighter. You're right. If we can show that Blackwell corrupted the marshal's office to issue a false warrant, that's proof of conspiracy. Can you prove it's false? If the federal inspector verifies your land claim is legitimate, then yes. The warrant becomes proof of corruption rather than legitimate law enforcement. They were building something now, a strategy that used Blackwell's own aggression against him. 2 days, Elias said. We hold for 2 days. We document everything they do, every attack, every bribe attempt, every threat. We build an airtight case, and when that inspector arrives, we give him enough evidence to bury Blackwell permanently. You make it sound almost possible. It is possible. Difficult, dangerous, probably going to hurt like hell. But possible. Cross managed a weak smile. You know, when I came out here, I thought I'd be doing quiet legal work, filing papers, writing briefs. Disappointed? Terrified. But no, not disappointed. This is what James would have wanted, fighting back. Actually fighting back instead of just pushing papers around. They worked through the night, cross-documenting everything in careful legal language while Elias reinforced the cabin's remaining defenses. They were preparing for a siege that would determine everything. As dawn approached, Elias took a position at the window and watched the valley lighten. Somewhere out there, Carson was coming with 40 men and working artillery. Somewhere in Prospect Creek, a marshal was preparing to serve a warrant. Somewhere in Denver, an inspector was wrapping up another case before heading to this one. All the pieces were moving. The question was which ones would arrive first, and what would be left standing when they did. Cross joined him at the window, holding 2 cups of coffee. To surviving the next 2 days, the lawyer said, raising his cup. Elias clinked his cup against Cross's. To making them count. They drank in silence, watching the sun rise over a valley that had become a battleground. And in the distance, just barely visible, dust rose from the road. Someone was coming. A lot of someones. The final phase was beginning. The dust cloud resolved into a convoy. 6 wagons, maybe 30 riders, moving up the valley road in disciplined formation. This wasn't Dalton Reeves's operation anymore. This was something else entirely. Carson had arrived. Elias counted the men through his scope. 32 visible, probably more in the wagons. They moved with military precision, spread out to avoid bunching, scouts ranging ahead. These weren't hired thugs. These were professionals. That's a lot of firepower, Cross said from behind him. It's a show of force. Carson wants me to see what I'm up against. Is it working? Ask me in an hour. The convoy stopped half a mile out beyond rifle range. Men dismounted and began setting up a proper encampment with practiced efficiency. Tents went up in neat rows. A command post took shape in the center. Sentries established a perimeter. Within 30 minutes, they'd created a small military base. Carson himself was easy to spot. Tall, maybe 45, wearing a dark suit despite the dust and heat. He stood at the command post gesturing to various positions while subordinates took notes. Even from this distance, Elias could see the man carried himself with absolute authority. He's done this before, Elias said. Sieges? Operations, probably military background. Look at the camp layout. That's textbook field fortification. Cross squinted through the spare rifle scope Elias had given him. I don't see anything textbook, just tents. Exactly. Tents positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire. Supply wagons protected by berms, command post with clear sight lines in all directions. Whoever trained Carson knew what they were doing. That's bad for us. That's information. Information we can use. They watched for another hour as the camp took final shape. Then a rider approached under white flag, stopping at the same position Hutchins had used yesterday. But this wasn't Hutchins. The rider was young, maybe 20, holding a sealed envelope above his head. "Message from Mr. Carson," he called out. "He requests a meeting. Just you and him. Neutral ground." Elias didn't respond immediately. He studied the rider, the camp behind him, the surrounding terrain, looking for the trap, because there was always a trap. "What do you think?" Cross asked. "I think Carson wants to size me up in person, see if I'm everything he's heard or just an old man who got lucky." "Are you going to meet him?" "Should I?" Cross considered. "Strategically, it gives you information about his thinking, his priorities, maybe his weaknesses, and gives him the same about me." "True. But you're the defender here. You already know this terrain. He's learning it. That advantage doesn't change whether you meet him or not." "Valid points." Elias called out to the rider. "Where and when?" "Center of the clearing, 1 hour. No weapons." "I'll keep my weapons." The rider hesitated, clearly not authorized to negotiate terms. "I'll relay that to Mr. Carson." He rode back to camp. Elias immediately began preparing. He cleaned both revolvers, checked ammunition, selected the knife with the best balance. If this was going to be a face-to-face meeting, he'd be ready for it to go sideways. Cross paced nervously. "What if it's an ambush? What if he just shoots you the moment you step out?" "Then you use the south tunnel and get to that federal inspector. Make sure this whole thing wasn't for nothing." "I'm serious." "So am I. This is risky. But Carson taking time to request a meeting means something. Means he's not just here to burn me out. He wants something else." "Like what?" "That's what I'm going to find out." 50 minutes later, Elias stepped out of the cabin. The morning sun was bright, the air already warming. He walked slowly toward the center of the clearing, hands visible but close to his holstered revolvers. Carson was already there, standing alone in a small patch of sunlight. Up close, he was exactly what Elias expected. Fit, controlled, eyes that missed nothing. Former military for sure, probably officer rank. They stopped 10 feet apart. "Mr. Blackwood," Carson said. His voice was calm, professional. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. Didn't realize I had much choice." "You always have choices. That's what this conversation is about." Carson gestured at the surrounding valley. "This is impressive defensive positioning. Natural choke points, elevated sight lines, multiple fallback positions. Someone with training chose this location. Someone who wanted to be left alone. And yet here we are." Carson pulled out a cigar case, offered one to Elias. Elias shook his head. Carson lit his own, took a slow draw. "I've been briefed on your history. Cavalry service, freelance work for various government concerns. You were good at what you did." "Was." "I don't think that skill set expires. Last night you sabotaged our camp, disabled artillery, and escaped without casualties on either side. That's professional work." "I was making a point. You made it. You're not a helpless hermit. We understand that now, which is why I'm here instead of just ordering an assault." Elias studied Carson's face, looking for tells. The man was controlled, but there was something underneath, stress maybe, pressure, from above. "Blackwell's pushing you," Elias said. Carson's expression didn't change, but his cigar hand paused briefly. "Mr. Blackwell is my employer. His timelines are my timelines. And his timelines are slipping. Because you're making them slip. Which brings us to why we're talking." Carson flicked ash from his cigar. "I'm authorized to make you an offer, $50,000. Full legal immunity from the warrant, transport to anywhere in the country you want to go. In exchange, you sign over the property and disappear." 50,000. That was more than twice Hutchins' offer. Blackwell was hemorrhaging money trying to solve this problem. "And Cross?" Elias asked. "The lawyer goes free. No charges. No retaliation. He gets to walk away." "Why would I believe that?" "Because I give you my word. And unlike the men you've dealt with so far, my word actually means something." There was truth in that statement. Carson wasn't like Dalton Reeves or the hired guns. He had a code, however twisted by working for someone like Blackwell. "What happens if I refuse?" Elias asked. Carson took another draw on his cigar. "Then I do my job. I have 42 men, 3 artillery pieces, and unlimited resources. I will take this valley, Mr. Blackwood,
It's just a question of how much blood gets spilled in the process. You sound certain. I am certain. I've conducted 17 operations like this. I've never failed. Not because I'm cruel or because I enjoy it, but because I'm thorough, patient, and willing to do whatever is necessary. Carson met Elias's eyes. You're good, but you're also one man with limited supplies facing an overwhelming force. The mathematics don't favor you. Mathematics don't account for will. No, they don't. Which is why I'm making this offer. I respect what you've done here, the stand you're making. But respect doesn't change outcomes. Carson gestured toward the cabin. That structure, however well fortified, can't withstand sustained artillery bombardment. Your tunnels, however cleverly hidden, can be found and collapsed. Your traps can be cleared. Your ammunition will run out. And when it does, you'll have nothing left but pride. Pride's kept men alive before. Pride's also gotten them killed. Carson finished his cigar and ground it out carefully. I'm giving you a way out where everyone survives, where you get enough money to build 10 cabins anywhere you want, where this whole thing ends without more violence. And Blackwell gets his railroad. Blackwell gets his railroad either way. The only variable is whether you're alive to spend $50,000 or dead over a piece of land that someone else will own by next month. It was the most honest thing anyone from Blackwell's organization had said. No pretense, no manipulation, just cold calculation presented as inevitable fact. Elias respected that, even if he rejected the conclusion. I need to think about it, he said. Carson nodded. You have until sunset. After that, the offer expires and I begin active operations. Bombardment starts at dawn tomorrow. That's 8 hours. That's generous considering. Most of my operations don't involve negotiation at all. Carson started to walk away, then paused. Mr. Blackwood? I meant what I said about respect. You've held off a superior force for longer than most professional soldiers could, but this ends one of two ways. Take the money while the offer stands. He walked back toward his camp, posture straight, movements measured. Elias returned to the cabin, his mind working through variables and options. Cross was waiting by the door. Well? Carson's smart, disciplined. He'll do exactly what he says he'll do. Which is, shell us into rubble starting tomorrow morning if I don't take his offer. Cross's face went pale. Can he actually do that? 3 artillery pieces properly positioned? Yes. This cabin can take rifle fire all day, but sustained howitzer bombardment will break it apart. So what do we do? Elias sat at the table and pulled out the map of the valley. We have 8 hours before the offer expires. 20 hours before bombardment starts. The federal inspector arrives tomorrow afternoon. We can't survive bombardment for that long. No, we can't. Elias traced routes on the map. But Carson's assuming we'll stay here, that we'll defend this position to the end. You're saying we abandon the cabin? I'm saying we make them think we're abandoning it. Use the south tunnel. Set up a false trail heading east. Meanwhile, we circle back through the mountains and hit their camp from an angle they're not watching. Cross stared at him. Hit their camp? With what force? With information. Carson's operation is funded by Blackwell's investors. Investors who are already nervous about the timeline. If we can create enough chaos, enough visible failure, it undermines confidence, undermines funding. That's insane. They have 42 men. They have 42 men who think they're besieging a static target. They're set up for defense against a breakout, not for being attacked themselves. Cross rubbed his face. I'm a lawyer. This is beyond my understanding. Then trust mine. We can't win by sitting here. We have to change the battlefield. They spent the next 2 hours planning. Elias worked out approach routes and timing. Cross drafted a message to the journalist detailing everything they'd witnessed, including Carson's arrival and the artillery threat. If they didn't survive, at least the story would. Around noon, a rider approached with another white flag. Message from Mr. Carson, the man called. He's extending the deadline. You now have until midnight to decide. Elias stepped to the door. Why the extension? Mr. Carson says he received word from his employer, wants to give you every possible chance to accept. The rider left quickly. Cross looked confused. Why would Carson give us more time? Because something's changed, something Carson didn't expect. Elias thought about it. Blackwell must have sent word.
Maybe pressuring Carson to avoid violence if possible. Maybe worried about attention.
Or maybe the journalist is already making noise. I sent word to him 2 days ago. If he started investigating, asking questions in Denver, that could spook Blackwell's investors. That made sense. Public scrutiny was exactly what Blackwell wanted to avoid. Then we're having an effect, Elias said. We keep pressing.
They continued preparing. Elias gathered supplies for a mobile operation. Cross-organized all the documentation they'd accumulated. Proof of the fraudulent land claim, records of intimidation, Carson's own arrival with military force. Around 3 in the afternoon, something unexpected happened. A single rider approached, but not under white flag. He came fast, horse at full gallop, and he was shouting before he even dismounted. "Blackwood! Elias Blackwood!" Elias grabbed the Winchester and moved to the window. The rider was young, covered in trail dust, waving papers above his head. "I'm from the Territorial Surveyor's Office. I have urgent information." "State your business," Elias called out. "The federal inspector sent word ahead. Your land claim has been verified as legitimate. The corporate filing by the Colorado Territorial Development Corporation is fraudulent. You are the legal owner of this property." Cross grabbed Elias's arm. "That's it. That's the verification we needed." The rider continued, still waving papers. "The inspector will arrive tomorrow to make it official, but he wanted you to know immediately. The warrant for your arrest has been voided. You are acting within your legal rights." Elias felt something shift in his chest. After days of fighting, of uncertainty, of calculating impossible odds, they'd actually done it. They'd won the legal battle. But he knew immediately that wouldn't be enough. "Get inside," he told the rider. "Quickly!" The young man dismounted and ran to the cabin. Elias pulled him through the door and secured it behind him. "What's your name?" Elias asked. "Thomas Webb, junior surveyor. The inspector sent me ahead because he knew time was critical." "You rode past Carson's camp to get here." "I did. They tried to stop me, but I showed them my federal credentials. They had to let me through." Cross was reading the official documents Webb had brought. His hands shook with excitement. "This is legitimate, fully certified. This proves everything." "It proves the land claim," Elias said. "It doesn't stop 42 men with artillery." Webb looked confused. "But if you're the legal owner, they can't force you off. That would be..." "Illegal?" Elias finished. "Men like Blackwell don't care about legality when they've already invested this much. Carson's not here to enforce laws. He's here to get results." As if to prove the point, gunfire erupted from the valley. Not aimed at the cabin, aimed at the sky. Signal shots. Then Dalton Reeves rode out from the camp, stopping in the clearing. "Blackwood," he shouted. "We know about the surveyor's report. Carson's calling an emergency meeting. He wants to talk." Elias looked at Cross. "They know they've lost the legal ground." "Which makes them more dangerous," Cross said. "They can't justify this operation anymore. They either walk away or commit to pure force." "Carson's not the walkaway type," Webb spoke up nervously. "The federal inspector will be here tomorrow. If you can just hold until then, he'll have authority to order them off the property." "Lot can happen in a day," Elias muttered. He walked to the door and called back to Reeves. "What does Carson want?" "Face to face, same as before. Just you and him." "When?" "Now. He's waiting." Elias strapped on both revolvers. Cross started to protest, but Elias cut him off. "Stay with Webb. If I'm not back in an hour, use the tunnel." "You're walking into a trap." "Maybe. Or maybe Carson's actually interested in talking now that his legal justification disappeared." "You have too much faith in his honor." "I have faith in his practicality. He's a professional. Professionals adapt when circumstances change." Elias stepped out into afternoon sunlight. The valley was quiet now, the signal shots having stopped. He walked to the clearing center. Carson was already there, but his posture was different, tense, angry. "The surveyor's report," Carson said without preamble. "Is it legitimate?" "Yes." Carson's jaw tightened. "Then we have a problem. My authorization for this operation was based on legal corporate land acquisition. If that acquisition is fraudulent, I have no legal standing." "So call it off." "I can't. Blackwell's invested over $4 million into this railroad project. This land is the bottleneck. Without it, the entire venture collapses." "Not my problem." "It is your problem because Blackwell isn't going to walk away from $4 million. He'll go through me if necessary. He'll hire someone else. He'll find a way." Carson pulled out another cigar but didn't light it. I'm trying to prevent this from becoming a bloodbath. By offering what? By telling you the truth. Blackwell just sent me a message. He's ordering me to take this land by force, legal standing or not. He's tripling my fee. He's promising full legal protection if things go wrong. He's telling me to finish this within 24 hours regardless of cost. Elias felt ice in his stomach. You gonna do it? Carson was quiet for a long moment. I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of, Blackwood. I've bent laws, I've intimidated people. I've used force when I could have used negotiation, but I've never attacked a legally recognized landowner on behalf of someone who's blatantly in the wrong. First time for everything? Maybe. Or maybe this is where I draw the line. Carson finally lit his cigar. I need to show you something. Come with me. Where? My camp. I want you to see what you're up against if Blackwell replaces me with someone less principled. It was risky. Probably stupid. But Elias followed. They walked together toward the camp, an old soldier and an operations manager who'd suddenly found himself in ethical territory he hadn't planned for. The camp went quiet as they entered. 42 men watched Elias with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. Carson led him to the artillery positions. 3 howitzers, freshly assembled and calibrated. Stacks of shells beside each one. Crews standing ready. This is what Blackwell's paying for, Carson said. At dawn, if I follow orders, these guns open up. They'll fire for 6 hours straight if necessary. Your cabin will be rubble. Anyone inside will be dead. Elias studied the setup. The guns were positioned perfectly, overlapping fire sectors, protected by earthworks. Professional work. You brought me here to intimidate me? I brought you here to show you I'm serious about preventing this. Look around, Blackwood. Really look. Elias did, and he saw something he hadn't noticed before. The artillery crews weren't checking their weapons. They were standing idle, uncomfortable. Several were talking in low voices, gesturing toward the cabin. One was arguing with a sergeant. They don't want to do it, Elias said. Half of them don't. They signed on for a land clearance operation with legal backing. Now the legal backing's gone and they're being asked to murder a landowner who's within his rights. Some of them will do it anyway. Some won't. Which side are you on? Carson took a long draw on his cigar. I'm on the side of getting paid and staying alive, but I'm also tired of working for men like Blackwell, men who think money makes them immune to consequences. So what are you proposing? I'm proposing we end this differently. You, me, and that lawyer figure out a solution that doesn't involve my artillery crews committing murder and you getting killed for a piece of land. I'm listening. Blackwell wants this land because it's the only viable railroad route. But there might be another way. A compromise route that adds cost but doesn't require your property. It would take longer, require more investment, but it's technically feasible. Why would Blackwell accept that? Carson smiled grimly. Because if he doesn't, I walk away. I take my crew with me. And I make sure every newspaper in Colorado knows why. That federal inspector arrives tomorrow. I'll testify. I'll show them the orders Blackwell sent me. I'll expose the whole operation. Elias stared at him. You'd burn your own employer? I'd burn a criminal who put me in an impossible position. There's a difference. Carson gestured back toward the cabin. You've held out longer than anyone expected. You've gotten federal verification of your claim. You've embarrassed Blackwell and cost him millions. You've won, Blackwood. The question is whether you'll accept a win that doesn't end in bloodshed. It was tempting, so tempting. But Elias thought about James Whitmore, about 8 years of waiting for justice, about the fact that Blackwell had ordered one murder and was willing to order another. What guarantees do I have? He asked. My word, which I know isn't worth much to you, but also documentation. I'll put the compromise proposal in writing. I'll get Blackwell to sign it. If he violates it, you'll have proof. And if he sends someone else after you walk away, then you deal with them the same way you dealt with Reeves. But at least you'll have time, federal oversight, legal standing. It won't be a siege anymore. It'll be criminal trespass, and every lawman in the territory will be on your side. Elias looked back at the artillery pieces, at the men standing uncomfortably beside them, at Carson, who was offering something Elias hadn't expected, a way out that didn't require more death. I need to talk to Cross, Elias said. Take an hour, but decide fast. Blackwell's already sending messages demanding status updates. If I don't give him results soon, he'll replace me with someone who will. They walked back to the clearing. Elias returned to the cabin alone. Cross and Webb were waiting anxiously. Well? Cross asked. Elias explained Carson's proposal. The compromise route. The written guarantees. Carson's willingness to testify against Blackwell. Cross listened carefully, his legal mind processing angles. It could work. If Carson actually follows through, if Blackwell signs the agreement, we'd have everything we need to protect you going forward. But, Elias prompted, but it lets Blackwell off easy. He pays more money, takes a different route, gets his railroad anyway. He doesn't face real consequences for what he did to James, for what he tried to do to you. Webb spoke up. The federal inspector might still investigate the corruption, the fraudulent land claims, the intimidation tactics. Carson's testimony could lead to charges. Could, Elias repeated. Not will. Cross met his eyes. This is your decision, your land, your fight. I'll support whatever you choose. Elias walked to the window and looked out at the valley. His valley. The land he'd claimed 12 years ago as refuge from violence. He'd defended it. He'd won the legal battle. He'd forced Blackwell into a corner. But he hadn't destroyed him, hadn't brought the kind of justice James deserved. The question was whether that justice was worth more bloodshed, worth the lives of artillery crews who were just following orders, worth his own life and Cross's, and young Webb who'd ridden hard to bring good news. He thought about James, about the promise he'd made to not let them win. They hadn't won. Not completely, but neither had they lost completely. Sometimes in war, that was the best outcome available. Tell Carson I'll meet him at sunset, Elias said. We'll discuss terms. Cross nodded slowly. Webb looked relieved. Elias spent the remaining hours preparing, not for battle this time, for negotiation. At sunset, he walked out to meet Carson one final time. The operations manager was waiting with papers already drawn up. Professional to the end. The compromise route, Carson said, spreading a map. It adds 15 miles and requires 2 additional bridges. Costs Blackwell an extra $2 million, but it works. Elias studied the map. The route was viable. Difficult, expensive, but viable. And my guarantees? Carson produced another document. Legal agreement that your property remains yours in perpetuity. No future claims, no challenges, signed by Blackwell's corporate officers, plus my testimony to the federal inspector about the intimidation tactics. Will Blackwell actually sign this? He will if I tell him the alternative is me walking away and exposing everything. He needs this railroad more than he needs this specific piece of land. This gives him a path forward. Elias read the documents carefully. Cross had taught him what to look for: loopholes, ambiguous language, escape clauses. The papers were clean, straightforward, legally binding. One more thing, Elias said. Blackwell puts $1 million into a territorial fund for homesteaders, families who've been pushed off their land by corporate land grabs. Make them whole. Carson raised an eyebrow. That's not about you. No. It's about all the people like me who didn't have the skills or luck to fight back. It's about making this actually mean something. Blackwell will never agree to that. Then we fight, and you explain to your crews why they're murdering a man over corporate greed. Carson was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled slightly. You're a pain in the neck, Blackwood. I've been told that before. I'll propose it. Can't guarantee he'll accept. Try hard. They shook hands. It felt strange, shaking hands with someone who'd been preparing to kill him hours ago. But war made strange alliances. Carson rode back to camp to send telegrams. Elias returned to the cabin. Well? Cross asked. We wait. If Blackwell agrees, we get everything. If he refuses, we're back to artillery at dawn. The night was long. They took turns on watch, waiting for Carson's response. It came at 2 a.m, a rider with a sealed envelope. Elias opened it by lamplight. Inside was Blackwell's signature on all the documents. The property guarantee, the testimony agreement, and the $1 million homesteader fund. He agreed, Elias said quietly. Cross started laughing, partly relief, partly disbelief. We did it. We actually did it. We survived. Not quite the same thing. Surviving is winning when the alternative is dying. Fair point. At dawn, instead of artillery fire, they watched Carson's camp break down. Tents came down. Wagons were loaded. Men mounted horses. Within 3 hours, the valley was empty except for the cabin and its defenders. The federal inspector arrived that afternoon, verified everything, and made it official. Elias Blackwood was the legal owner of his land, now and forever. The journalist showed up 2 days later, interviewed everyone, and ran a front-page story about corporate corruption and one man's successful stand against it. Blackwell's investors got nervous. Several pulled funding. The railroad project stalled. Not destroyed, not defeated completely, but hurt, damaged, forced to operate under scrutiny. Cross stayed for another week, finalizing paperwork. When he finally prepared to leave, Elias walked him to his horse. "What will you do now?" Cross asked. "Same thing I've always done. Live here, be left alone." "You could do more, you know. With the attention this story's getting, you could help other homesteaders, teach them to defend their land, fight back against companies like Blackwell's." Elias considered that. "Maybe. Or maybe I've done my part. James would be proud. James would tell me I went easy on them." Cross smiled. "Probably. But he'd also tell you that you kept your promise. You didn't let them win." They shook hands. Cross rode out, leaving Elias alone again in his valley. The cabin needed repairs, the traps needed resetting. Life needed to return to normal. But normal felt different now. For 12 years, Elias had hidden from the world. Now the world knew who he was. The question was what he'd do with that. He stood in the clearing where he'd faced down Carson, where he'd negotiated terms, where he'd found a way to win without becoming the monster he'd been fighting. The valley was quiet, peaceful. But Elias Blackwood was no longer just a hermit hiding from his past. He was something else now, something the frontier might need. And for the first time in 12 years, that didn't scare him. The quiet lasted exactly 9 days. Elias had just finished repairing the east wall when he saw the wagon coming up the valley road. Not a military convoy this time. Just a single covered wagon pulled by 2 tired horses, a man and woman on the seat, 3 children visible in the back. He watched from the porch, Winchester resting against the doorframe within easy reach. Old habits. The wagon stopped 50 yards out. The man climbed down slowly, hands visible, no weapons. "Mr. Blackwood," he called out, "my name's Peter Christensen. I read about you in the Denver Post, about what you did, how you stood up to the railroad company." Elias didn't respond, just watched. Christensen continued, his voice carrying desperation. "We got pushed off our land 2 months ago. Different company, same tactics. They said our claim wasn't valid, said we were squatting. They burned our house and threatened my family. We've been living in this wagon ever since." "I'm sorry to hear that," Elias said, "but I can't help you. I'm not asking you to fight for us. I'm asking for advice. How did you do it? How did you make them back down?" "I had help. A lawyer. Federal inspector. Luck. We don't have any of that. We just have—" Christensen gestured at his family. "We just have each other. And I don't know what to do." The woman climbed down from the wagon seat. She was younger than her husband, maybe 30, with exhausted eyes. "Please, we're not asking for much. Just tell us how to protect ourselves. How to fight back." Elias felt something twist in his chest. He'd told Cross maybe he'd done his part, that maybe one fight was enough. But looking at these people, at the scared children peering out from the wagon, he knew that wasn't true. One fight was never enough when the same predators kept hunting. "Where's your land?" he asked. "North of Fort Collins. About 80 miles from here. Company called it abandoned property, but we were only gone for 2 weeks visiting my wife's sick mother. When we came back, they'd already filed new claims." "You have documentation? Original deed?" Christensen pulled papers from his coat. "Everything, but the local marshal won't look at it. Says it's a civil matter. Says we need to hire lawyers we can't afford." Elias walked forward and took the papers. Examined them in the afternoon light. The deed looked legitimate. The claim was solid. The company that had taken it was called Mountain Consolidated Holdings. He'd never heard of them. But the tactics were identical to Blackwell's operation, which meant they were probably connected, or at least learning from the same playbook. "You can't go back there alone," Elias said. "They'll kill you if you try." "I know. That's why we're here. We're asking you to teach us, train us, help us be ready." "I'm not a teacher. You defended your land against 40 men.
You made them back down. You're exactly what we need. Elias handed back the papers. Go to Denver. Find a lawyer named Samuel Cross. Tell him I sent you. He'll help with the legal angle. Legal doesn't work when they've already taken everything. We need to be able to defend ourselves. The woman added, We're not asking you to fight our battle. We're asking you to show us how to fight it ourselves. Elias looked at them for a long moment, saw the determination underneath the desperation. These weren't people looking for a savior. They were people willing to save themselves if someone just showed them how. That was different. You got supplies? He asked. Some, not much. How long can you stay? Christensen and his wife exchanged glances. As long as it takes. It'll take weeks, maybe months. I'll teach you defensive tactics, fortification, how to read terrain. But I won't teach you how to be killers. That's not what this is about. We don't want to kill anyone. We just want to protect what's ours. Then pull your wagon around back. Set up camp by the creek. We start at dawn. They looked stunned, like they hadn't actually expected him to agree. Thank you, the woman said, her voice breaking. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. This is going to be hard work. And there's no guarantee it'll be enough. It's more than we had before. They moved their wagon to the creek area. Elias watched them set up camp, the children helping their parents, everyone working together with practiced efficiency born from weeks of displacement. He thought about Cross's words, about helping other homesteaders, about teaching them to fight back. Maybe this was what came next. The first week was basic education. Elias taught them how to assess defensive positions, how to use terrain to their advantage, how to set up simple early warning systems. Peter was a quick learner, military service in his background. His wife, Sarah, had grown up on a ranch and knew how to shoot. But it was the children who surprised him. The oldest, a boy named Michael, who was maybe 13, absorbed everything like a sponge. He asked intelligent questions about sight lines and approach vectors. The younger two were less interested in tactics, but good at following instructions. By the second week, more wagons arrived. Word had spread somehow. 4 more families showed up, all with similar stories. Land stolen through legal manipulation, homes burned, families threatened. They'd heard about Elias Blackwood and come seeking help. Elias found himself running an impromptu training camp. He taught them how to fortify structures using limited resources, how to organize watch rotations, how to communicate across distances using signal systems, how to make an attacker think twice about easy targets. But he also taught them something more important, how to work together. Most of these families had been isolated on their individual claims, facing threats alone. Elias showed them that cooperation multiplied defensive capability. 5 families defending individual homesteads were vulnerable. 5 families defending each other were a community. On the 15th day, Samuel Cross returned. The lawyer rode up to find 30 people spread across Elias's property, some practicing with rifles, others building defensive structures, children running messages between groups. What in the name of... Cross dismounted, staring. What happened here? People needed help, Elias said simply. So you started a school? More like a cooperative. They help each other. I provide guidance. Cross walked through the camp, observing the organized chaos. He stopped to talk with several families, taking notes in his ever-present notebook. When he returned to Elias, he was smiling. This is brilliant, Cross said. You're creating exactly what these people need. Not just tactical knowledge, but solidarity. The companies prey on isolated homesteaders, but a coordinated group? That's much harder to intimidate. It's temporary. Once they learn what they need, they'll go back to their lands. And if they don't? What if this becomes permanent? What are you suggesting? Cross pulled out his notebook, flipped to a fresh page. I'm suggesting we formalize this, create an actual organization, the Homesteader Defense Association. I handle the legal work, you provide tactical training, and these families become the foundation of something bigger. I'm not interested in running an organization. You're already running one. You just haven't admitted it yet. Cross gestured at the families. Look at them. They're not just learning to defend their land, they're learning to hope again, to believe they have a chance against the companies that victimized them. Elias watched Peter Christensen teaching another man how to construct a deadfall trap, watched Sarah showing a group of women how to organize medical supplies,
Watched the children running between camps, carrying messages, helping however they could. Cross was right. This had already become something bigger than simple training. The question was whether Elias was ready to commit to it. That night, around the communal fire the families had started, Peter stood up and addressed the group. I want to say something. When we came here 2 weeks ago, we had nothing. We'd lost our home, our land, our hope. Mr. Blackwood could have turned us away. He had every right to. He'd already fought his own battle. Others nodded agreement. Peter continued. But he didn't. He let us stay. He taught us. And now we have something we didn't have before. We have knowledge, we have skills, we have each other. Sarah added, and we have a choice. We can take what we've learned and go back to fighting alone. Or we can stay together, help each other, build something that can actually stand against the companies trying to take our lands. There was murmuring around the fire. Some families looked interested, others uncertain. Michael, Peter's son, spoke up. I think we should stay together. Alone we're weak. Together we're strong. From the mouth of a 13-year-old, it sounded simple. Maybe that's why it landed so hard. One by one, families voiced their agreement. They wanted to formalize what they'd accidentally created here, a community of mutual defense. Cross looked at Elias. Your vote matters most. This is your land, your leadership that brought them here. What do you want? What did he want? What did he? Elias had spent 12 years hiding from the world, then 2 weeks fighting to keep it. Now he was being asked to step forward again, to lead people who needed someone with his skills. He thought about James, about the promise he'd made, about not letting them win. Blackwell hadn't won, but men like Blackwell were still out there, still stealing land, still destroying families. One victory didn't stop that. One fortified cabin didn't change the system, but maybe a network of trained, organized homesteaders could. I'm not a leader, Elias said finally. I'm a soldier who got tired of fighting, but if you're asking whether I'll help you build something that fights back against corporate land theft, yeah, I'll help with that. The families erupted in quiet celebration. Not loud. They'd learned tactical discipline from Elias, but genuine. Cross immediately started making plans. We'll need to file proper organizational papers, establish legal standing, create bylaws. I can handle that from Denver, but we'll need a base of operations. Elias gestured at the valley. This is the base. You're willing to let 30 families settle on your property? I'm willing to let people who need a safe place have one. We'll organize it properly, build real structures, set up proper defenses, make this place a fortress that serves everyone. Over the next month, the camp transformed into a settlement. Men built cabins using timber from the surrounding forest. Women organized supply chains and medical facilities. Children established a school system where tactical knowledge was taught alongside reading and arithmetic. Elias found himself in an unexpected role. Not quite a commander, but a mentor. People came to him with problems, asked his advice, sought his approval for defensive plans. He was uncomfortable with it at first, but he learned to accept it. Cross traveled back and forth from Denver building the legal framework. He filed incorporation papers for the Homesteader Defense Association. He established connections with sympathetic journalists and politicians. He built a network of lawyers willing to take cases pro bono. 6 weeks after the Christiansens first arrived, Cross returned with news. Mountain Consolidated Holdings just dropped their claim on the Christiansen property, he announced. Completely. No compensation, no conditions, they just walked away. Peter looked stunned. Why? What changed? Public pressure. The journalist who covered Elias's story wrote a follow-up about the Homesteader Defense Association, about families banding together, about corporate land theft being challenged systematically. Mountain Consolidated's investors got nervous, decided the property wasn't worth the attention. Sarah started crying. We can go home? You can go home with full legal protection. I've already filed the paperwork securing your claim permanently. Other families started asking about their situations. Cross had updates for several of them. Legal challenges filed, injunctions obtained. In 2 cases, the companies had already backed down. It was working. But success brought new problems. Word spread faster than Elias anticipated. More families arrived seeking help, then more. Within 2 months, over 100 people were camped in and around his valley. The valley couldn't support that many long term. We need to expand, Cross said during a planning meeting. Create multiple settlements, Train regional coordinators who can establish defensive cooperatives in other areas. Peter volunteered immediately. We're going back to our land near Fort Collins. We could establish a northern branch, help families in that region. Others offered similar ideas. Western Colorado, the mining territories, even Kansas and Wyoming. The Homesteader Defense Association was becoming a movement. Elias found it overwhelming. He'd started this to help one family. Now it was becoming something he barely recognized. Late one night, sitting alone on his porch while the settlement slept, he heard footsteps. Cross approached and sat beside him. Having doubts? The lawyer asked. Having thoughts. Different thing. Want to share them? Elias was quiet for a moment. I spent my whole life being good at violence, cavalry, freelance work. All of it required hurting people efficiently. When I came here, I thought I was done with that, thought I could just exist quietly until I died. But violence found me anyway. And when it did, I realized something. Being good at violence isn't evil if you use it to protect people who can't protect themselves. The skill isn't the problem, the purpose is. Cross nodded. James would agree with that. James was better at this than me. He believed in systems, laws, order. I just believed in survival. You're doing more than surviving now. You're building something that will outlast you. That's purpose. Or it's ego, thinking I'm important enough to change things. It's not ego when you're actually changing things. Look at what's happened in just 2 months. 12 families have reclaimed their land. 3 more are in legal proceedings they're likely to win. You've trained over 100 people in defensive tactics. You've created a model that's being replicated across the territory. Elias stared out at the valley, at the small lights from cabins where families slept safely for the first time in months. What happens when I'm gone? He asked. When I'm too old or dead to train people? Then the people you trained will train others. That's how movements work. You plant seeds. Other people nurture them. Eventually you get a forest. That's optimistic. That's realistic. You think you're holding this together alone, but you're not. Peter could run tactical training now. Sarah's better at logistics than you ever were. Michael knows defensive theory better than most military officers. You've built something that doesn't need you to survive. Then why do I feel like I'm the only thing keeping it from falling apart? Cross smiled. Because you're not used to trusting other people. Because you spent 12 years alone. Because letting go of control is harder than maintaining it. Fair points. All of them. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Cross spoke again. I got word from Denver. Harrison Blackwell's railroad project collapsed completely. His investors pulled out after the negative publicity. He's being investigated for fraud. Might actually face charges. Elias absorbed that. The man who'd ordered James's murder might finally face consequences. Good, he said quietly. More than good. It's proof that this works. That standing up to these people, creating enough noise and attention, can actually bring them down. One man brought down. How many more out there? Fewer than before, because now homesteaders have an option. They don't have to face land theft alone. They have the association. They have training. They have legal support. The predators are learning that easy targets don't exist anymore. Elias thought about that. About the shift from defending one piece of land to defending a principle. About evolution from soldier to mentor to whatever he was now. You think James would be proud? He asked. I think James is proud, wherever he is. You believe in that? Afterlife? I believe that what we do echoes, that the people we love continue through our actions. James fought for justice. You're fighting for justice. In that way, he's still here. It was a comforting thought, even if Elias wasn't sure he believed it. The next morning, he called a meeting of the senior families. 20 people gathered around the large table in the main hall they'd constructed. We need to make a decision about the future, Elias began. This settlement can't keep growing. We're already at capacity. We have 3 options. We can limit membership and turn people away. We can expand to new locations. Or we can transition to a training model where people come here for a few weeks, then return to their own lands to establish local cooperatives. Peter spoke first. Training model makes sense. Concentrating everyone in one place makes us a target, but spreading the knowledge across multiple locations makes us resilient. Sarah agreed. And it serves more people. We can train maybe 20 families at a time here, send them out with knowledge and resources, Then train the next group. Others voiced similar opinions. The consensus was clear. Cross made it official. I'll draw up the organizational structure. Regional chapters, each with trained coordinators. Central training facility here. Legal support network based in Denver. We're building an actual institution. Michael raised his hand. What about the companies? They're not going to just accept this. They'll fight back. Smart kid. Elias had been thinking the same thing.
They will fight back, Elias confirmed. They'll try to infiltrate us, bribe our members, discredit us publicly, maybe even use violence. We need to be ready for that. How? Someone asked. By being transparent, by documenting everything, by operating within the law even when they don't. We don't give them ammunition to use against us, Cross added, and by making ourselves too big to easily destroy. One settlement, one leader, that's vulnerable. But a network of interconnected communities, each capable of independent operation, that's robust. They spent the next several hours hammering out details, training schedules, regional organization, legal protocols, supply chains. By the time they finished, they'd created a blueprint for something unprecedented in the Colorado territory. A systematic defense against corporate land theft. Over the following months, the model proved itself. The first group of trainees completed their program and returned to their homesteads. They established local defensive cooperatives. When companies tried to intimidate them, they found organized resistance instead of isolated victims. The second training group arrived. Then the third. Cross's legal network won several major cases. Courts started recognizing the pattern of fraudulent land claims. Marshals stopped automatically siding with corporations. The tide was shifting. Elias watched it happen with a mixture of pride and discomfort. He'd never wanted to be important, never wanted attention, but somehow he'd become the face of a movement. People started calling him different things. The guardian of Blackwood Ridge, the homesteader's general, the man who said no. He hated all of them, but he understood what they represented. Hope, defiance, proof that regular people could stand against powerful interests. 1 year after the Christiansens first arrived, Elias stood on his porch watching the 6th training group practice defensive drills. 30 families, learning the skills that might save their homes. Cross approached and leaned against the railing beside him. "You did it," the lawyer said simply. "Did what?" "Change things. Actually change them. This time last year, you were alone in a cabin waiting to die. Now you're training an army of homesteaders who are reclaiming the frontier from corporate predators. Feels bigger than I intended. The best things usually are." Cross pulled out a telegram. "This came for you. From Washington." Elias took it and read. A territorial governor wanted to meet with him, discuss making the Homesteader Defense Association an official territorial institution with government support. "What do you think?" Cross asked. "I think government support comes with government control. Once we're official, we're political. We become a target for every company with influence. True, but we'd also have resources. Legal standing, protection." Elias folded the telegram and tucked it in his pocket. "Let me think about it." That evening, he walked alone to the spot where he'd first confronted Carson, where he'd negotiated terms that had saved lives and started everything that came after. He thought about paths not taken. He could have accepted Hutchins' money, could have left and built a new life somewhere else, could have stayed isolated and let the world solve its own problems. Instead, he'd chosen to fight, to stand, to build something that helped others stand too. Had it been worth it? He thought about the families who'd reclaimed their land, about the children learning to defend their homes, about the companies who were learning that easy victims didn't exist anymore. Yeah, it had been worth it. He returned to the cabin and found Cross waiting. "Tell the governor yes," Elias said. "We'll meet, we'll listen, but we don't give up control. This organization serves homesteaders, not politicians." "Understood. I'll arrange it." Cross left. Elias sat at his table and looked at the photograph of James that still hung by the window. "We didn't let them win," he said to the image. "You were right. Fighting back matters, even when it seems impossible." The photograph didn't answer, but Elias felt something settle in his chest, a sense that he'd honored the promise he'd made 8 years ago. The next morning, young Michael found him before training started. "Mr. Blackwood, can I ask you something?" Go ahead. Do you think we're really going to win? Like, permanently? Or is this just temporary?
Elias considered the question seriously. Winning isn't permanent, it's ongoing. There'll always be people trying to take what isn't theirs. The question is whether we keep fighting back. Will you? Keep fighting? As long as I'm able to. But eventually you and the others will have to carry it forward. That's how this works. The old teach the young become the old. The fight continues. That sounds exhausting, Elias smiled. It is, but it's better than the alternative, which is giving up, letting them win without resistance. That's not living, that's just existing until you die. Michael nodded thoughtfully and ran off to join the other trainees. Elias watched him go and realized something. He was looking at the future. These children learning defensive tactics today would be the adults defending the frontier tomorrow. That was the real victory. Not defeating one company or saving one piece of land, but creating a generation that refused to be victims. 5 years later, Elias Blackwood sat on his porch in the late afternoon sun. His hair had gone completely white. His hands shook sometimes from old injuries, but his eyes were still sharp. The valley below had transformed completely. What had started as one cabin was now a small town, permanent structures, a school, a medical facility, housing for rotating groups of trainees. The Homesteader Defense Association had chapters in 6 territories. They'd helped over 300 families reclaim stolen land. They'd trained more than 1,000 people in defensive tactics. Corporate land theft hadn't stopped, but it had slowed. Companies learned that targeting homesteaders associated with the HDA brought legal challenges and public scrutiny they couldn't afford. Cross visited monthly, bringing updates and legal briefs. Peter Christensen ran the northern chapter and had trained dozens of regional coordinators. Sarah had written a manual on homestead defense that was being distributed across the Western territories. And Michael, now 18, was studying law in Denver, planning to join Cross's practice and provide legal support to the organization. Everything had worked out better than Elias had any right to expect. But he was tired, 67 years old, a lifetime of violence and stress catching up to him. He'd already told Cross he was stepping back, transitioning leadership to the younger generation. His body couldn't keep up with the demands anymore. Peter and Sarah would take over training operations. Cross would handle legal and organizational matters. Michael, when he finished school, would join the legal team. The settlement would continue without him. That was good. That was how it should be. Elias stood slowly and walked to the edge of the porch, looked out at the valley he'd defended 5 years ago against impossible odds. He'd won more than the battle. He'd won the right to make his life mean something beyond survival. That was enough. He went inside, made coffee, and sat at his table. The photograph of James still hung by the window, faded now, but still there. "We built something good," Elias said to it. "Not perfect, but good. People helping people. That's what you wanted, isn't it?" The photograph didn't answer, but Elias felt at peace. He'd kept his promise. He'd fought the right fight. He'd turned his skills toward protecting instead of destroying. And now, finally, he could rest. Not the rest of giving up, the rest of knowing the work would continue without him. Outside, he could hear the trainees practicing, voices calling instructions, the sound of construction as new buildings went up, life continuing, purpose spreading. Elias Blackwood closed his eyes and smiled. He'd come to this valley 12 years ago looking for isolation, for an end to violence, for peace. He'd found all of it, but not the way he expected. Not through hiding, through standing, not through peace, through fighting for it, not through isolation, through building community. The old man who'd been dismissed as weak had become the foundation of something that would outlast him. That was legacy. That was victory. That was enough.